Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Welcome to Speaker's Corner UK channel. And as the title suggests, today we are going to do a review and a critique of part one of the Answering Atheism live stream that was on Hamza's Den last night. Was it last night or the night before? Sorry, that was Friday night, the 25th of September. So we're going to do part one, which is the opening, if you like, with Hamza, Imran and Sabur about their case against atheism or what they want atheists to answer. And then in part two, at some point when both Stops and I have time, we'll go into the atheists that came on. So welcome, Stops. Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Hey, and welcome everybody. Going strong, going well. I'm just really, am I allowed to say pissed off? I'm pissed off, really. Yeah.
That's fine. You're allowed to say virtually anything you want here. Apart from what YouTube will try and censor, but I don't have a problem. I choose not to feel insulted or whatever the case is, but I understand most humans haven't, reached that level or understand that yet. So go ahead if you want to share it. Otherwise, we get straight into it.
No, I'm just feeling triggered. Let me simmer down. Let me calm down because at the moment it's just emotional. So.
All right, so what we're going to do, as we say, so I have taken the first part of the Hamza stream here. I've trimmed out the beginning where there was a bit of chatter, and now we're going to get straight into it here. And what we're going to do our best to do is focus on reviewing or critiquing the comments that they make, anything that is potentially, I say substantial. That's what we're going to look to critique. We're going to try our best not to point at people and what we personally think about them. That's very difficult to do on some occasions, and Stops and I are going to try and remind each other, and if we both fail, we ask you to do it and say, hey guys, make sure you critique the information rather than the person, because I think there is a critique that's valid of a person if you get to a point where they have demonstrated their ignorance or their dishonesty or disingenuousness around a particular topic and you've highlighted. I think it's entirely fine to show that that's the case. But I think what we're going to try and do here is focus on dealing with the information and our responses to it. Because they're going to be doing a stream tonight at 9 p.m. where they've invited atheists, except Hamza was on earlier today. And basically he was told, and again, you can go watch his Hamza's Den stream. He was told that the people on the gin and tonic are Islamophobes and attack a religion, Islam. So Stop Spamming has already been blocked on his channel in terms of being able to text. We welcome any Muslim here, and if you want to come in and chat or say whatever you like. If you're a mod, by the way, TDS Dave and all our other mods, please let them speak unless they're spamming or they do something against YouTube's terms and conditions that might get, a flag against the channel. Anything else, I want people to say their minds in whatever way they want. So please go ahead and do that. And if you're a Muslim who wants to either comment or you want to join us, then let us know in the comments and we'll see if we can do that. We have got limited time, which is why we're only doing part one. Because Stops has to leave a little earlier today, but we'll try and do part two at some point as soon as we can when both of us have got time. We can't tell you ahead of time because Stops and I obviously have a life and we do this as a side sort of hobby issue where we want to critique Islam. But let's get started, I think, straight away, unless there's anything else you want to say, Stops.
No, that's fine. I just want to. Right. I want to point out, and really point out that the title of this is Answering Atheists. Okay, this is the title, Answering Atheists. Now, yep. I don't see a single atheist here.
Okay, so they're going to lay out their case and then they're going to invite them in. I think even Sabur at the end of this stream said next time let's get the atheists on straight away because they went into a long thing and we'll hear it now. This particular part lasts 52 minutes, by the way. So I've edited so that it starts when the actual substantive position starts or when Hamza introduces it proper, and then we go through the entire thing here. Hopefully next time they won't do this or they can summarize it in 5 minutes, whatever their critique is, but this went on for ages. But we're going to start with this. So with that said, let me go full,
Well, what I want to say, these guys are presenting what they think is what we critique. Right, this is the funny thing, that they're not asking me and saying, well, what is your bone of contention or what is it that you don't like about whatever. No, they take what this is crazy because it doesn't work, because a theist is never able to put themselves into the shoes or brain of an atheist. The other way around, yes, because a lot of atheists were theists at some stage, but it doesn't work like that. So
I think
this
the
is
other
quite
thing
funny.
that stops is that they are putting forward what they normally hear from quote unquote atheists. Now every atheist is different, although we all have a lack of belief or disbelief in a god or gods. But what they're bringing forward is the common things they quote unquote hear from atheists and why it's bad arguments, etc. So I agree with you. They're not in the mind of an atheist, but they are presenting what they think are or their views on what some of the common things they hear. We can't argue with that. If that's what they claim to hear all the time, fine, but we're going to critique what their claims are about it.
But I need to update this again. They are presenting what they think is what we critique, what they understand from what an atheist is telling them. Because I would say in 90% of the times, they don't understand what we're saying. So what they are doing is they are taking what they understand, what they hear, through their own filter.
Sure.
And then they
Yeah,
say,
I
well,
agree.
this is what these people think. And it can't work.
Well, that's what we're going to go through now. So, right, let's get going. Here we go.
I've been boasting that we're going to put atheists back in their box. And the way we plan to do it is present basic atheist arguments that they come with, that they think they have some kind of rationale, reason, logic behind. And what I want to do today, inshallah, with all three of us, is factory reset atheists. So whatever atheists are watching now,
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I think that's a reference to, hey, you should stop doing this because we're going to refute these quote-unquote arguments, and so you shouldn't be bringing them again. I guess that's what he's meaning by this quote-unquote factory reset.
But listen to what he's saying. This is quite interesting. He's saying, we are going to put them back into the box. In other words, he seems to think that we should be in a box, we should keep quiet, we should let Islam rule, and then we should just keep quiet and be happy that they are so gracious that they let us live or something. And this is the entire attitude. He doesn't, it's a condescending thing. He has the high ground because he is the one who has a God, and therefore he's worth much more. And then, we need to reset the atheists. And hang on, we are reacting. If you guys shut up, there is nothing that we are going to say. I don't give a continental hoot whether or not you need a God to get you through the day. If you need a God, well, then go for it. If you want to hit your head on the floor 5 times a day, go ahead. It's your prerogative. I do not care. But if you come to me and you say, you are wrong because I know how this works, I know what and who and where they created the universe and everything, then I start pushing back and I say, well, hang on, can you substantiate anything? And then they come back and they say no. So how is that putting me back in my box? How is that resetting me if I am reacting to the claims? I don't come to them and say, listen, you're an idiot. I don't come with anything like that. I say, well, what is your claim? Put your claim here on the table and let's go and look at it. But this is too much for them. So they get all emotional and they come and they say, yeah, we are attacking them. They've even created a word for that, which I still don't understand, this Islamophobe thing. And then they go and they say, well, let's put them back in the box. That is crazy. Sorry, factually reset atheists. I don't understand what that means, really.
That's
wish
fine.
somebody
I
would
just take
explain
it as what we kind of discussed there. And whites are religious, sometimes you've got to insult a person. I think there may well be a time for that. I think what's happening, and Hamza said it on his stream earlier today, they're using that as an excuse not to want to come on the show, right? Hey, you're attacking, you're Islamophobes, whatever the case is. So, I mean, there could be a time, but what's happening, of course, is this is being used as an excuse not to want to engage with us, except on their platform under their conditions. And so what we want to try and do is critique this in a way that doesn't give them that excuse, that suggests to them that they actually do need to come and have a conversation with us. We can even do it on a neutral platform. Stops went on. I might be able to go on tonight, potentially. It depends on the time of day. Otherwise, we can do it somewhere neutral. So that's the point of what we're going to try and do today to the best of our ability. None of us are perfect, and Stops and I can remind ourselves if we go off track. But that's our intention, is to go through what their reasons on why we don't agree with what they potentially have to say.
They kicked me off. And now they're telling me I got destroyed. I wasn't able to make a point because this guy Imran was talking all the time, and then they said goodbye. Cheers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take that you got destroyed particularly seriously, right? Because when you ask them, what is it specifically got destroyed, and you just don't hear anything substantive. So this whole thing of, Subur, school job, or rinse job or whatever, I'll deal with Hamza with that claim at some point, and we'll see, whether he's actually got anything substantive to say about it. But I'm not too fussed with that sort of stuff. That's just, wind. That's just noise. That has no substance to it. But let's carry on.
I want them to get reset and realize, wait a minute, I was saying something based on this assumption. Oh, I thought that, and then reduce it all, and then they can build them up again, inshallah. So basically, we're going to break it down into three basic components. The first one is going to be prove your God. When the atheist comes along and says, prove God exists, where's your evidence for God, and all of these kind of things, I'm going to demonstrate about belief, inshallah. Brother Sabor is going to demonstrate how when the atheist then thinks he brings his ace card of evolution, the idea that, because evolution is proven, then that means that there is no God somehow. So we're going to show how evolution doesn't undermine the existence of a creator. Okay. And then Brother Dr. Imran, mashallah, he's going to deal with the Stephen Fry type argument, which is suffering. Why do babies get cancer? This, that, the other. Because that's answering a different question, because you can't say God doesn't exist because suffering exists. You can say, why does God allow suffering to happen?
Rob, just give me. I mean, we're just 1.5 minutes into the video, and the whole thing is already completely destroyed. He does not understand what we're saying. He does not understand that I am going there and saying, you are making the claim X, and I am saying the claim X does not go together with what we see in reality. So it's not that we are saying God doesn't exist because of suffering. No, it's because we are saying there is a claim that God has this attribute X, which doesn't go together with what we see in reality. And that is why the God who makes the claim X cannot exist. So he doesn't understand the whole, the complexity. He doesn't understand that there's another level to this. So he's just looking at the words, and then he says, prove God exists. No, it's not that. So it's quite funny that, and this is why I'm saying there's a huge basic flaw here, that they don't have somebody there who can actually explain to them what the bone of contention actually is. It's their filter that they are misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think we'll actually cover that as we go through this in depth here, because you'll see that there's certain things that are being said that are either mistaken or uncharitable, and that's what we're going to point out during this thing. So I agree with you. The premise that they're starting with here is not a solid one, and we're going to critique and review that as we go through the video now in more depth.
If he exists. So those are the three components. Inshallah, then each one will give us like a 5-10 minute presentation on.
Well, it won't be a 5 or 10 minute, because you can see there's an hour and 8 minutes here. That's how long I thought it was 52 minutes. So I apologize. There's an hour and 8 minutes that they sort of go into this thing. So it's not going to be 5 or 10 minutes in any stretch of the imagination.
Each point. And then, inshallah, we'll invite atheists to come on and respond to what's been said, inshallah. Not every atheist. Now, here's the first thing you see. You've got to know your atheist, what type of person you're speaking with. Because I deal, obviously, primarily with Speaker's Corner atheists, Facebook atheists, TikTok atheists. So these guys are kind of opinionated. Where you have other atheists, which was like myself, where I didn't believe in God, but didn't not believe in God, didn't care, didn't think.
Hang on a moment. You can't be an atheist and believe in God and not believe in God. What does that mean? It's just bad language there. But basically he's saying you can, there's different atheists. That's correct. So when you say answering atheists, what you should say in your title then is answering specific atheists, and we're going to tell you which atheists we're answering, because answering atheists is a general term, referring to all atheists, and now he's trying to clarify which specific atheists he's referring to.
Okay, I disagree here. I'm saying an atheist, an atheist, an atheist, an atheist is always the same thing. And that is, don't believe goddesses exist. There are other facets to the person, which then makes them a different person. But the atheist is always the same. So the point that they are making, and this is what they don't understand, a person whom they are addressing as somebody who does not believe gods exist is not able to answer any other questions, because it depends what the other facets are of that person. So you can't say, you're an atheist, please explain the origin of the universe. That does not make sense, because an atheist is only the atheist. And this is what you need to understand. If it's then an atheist who also is a cosmologist, then you can ask that. But you can't go, you are an atheist, philosopher, or whatever, go and explain that. That doesn't work. And this is why I'm trying to educate them that an atheist always has the same attribute, and that is not believing gods exist. Finished. If you then want to address anything on top of that, then you have to go and look what kind of a person he is, not what kind of an atheist he is, because an atheist is always the same.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you could say it like that. I think there's implications for atheism, and one of them is that we don't believe that there's a teleological beginning to the universe. You are correct that some atheists, like he will say, he's an atheist that didn't really care too much about this. He just went about his life. He's still in his worldview, which isn't necessarily atheism, but in that worldview, there will be a presupposition that the universe, whatever the universe's origin is, whether it's eternal or whether it had a beginning, it wasn't from a teleological mind. Now, he might not have the information about it, but part of the implication of his worldview does entail that. No atheist would say, hey, I believe that the universe began or is eternal and was created by a God. That they wouldn't say. So on that general term, what he is saying, though, is he's trying to focus on the atheists that actually bring arguments. He's claiming that he was an atheist that, like you say, was kind of apathy in the sense that he didn't believe a God exists, but he didn't have arguments and he didn't engage with people. So his claim is that he's actually trying to critique the atheists that come forward with what they think are, quote, bad arguments, rather than all atheists, where some of them, like I would have been an atheist years ago, that didn't know, I just didn't believe in any gods. But if you had to ask me, I just didn't have any information about it. And so that's what he's trying to do here.
Hawkins' kind of ideas and that dismissed God, it was just I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't used my intellect, I hadn't considered it, if you like. So I didn't believe in God, but I didn't have a reason to, nor bother looking into it. So there are atheists who are nominal, so you don't need to jump all over with this. Yeah, this is for those atheists who think they have some kind of rational, intellectual higher ground. That's who we're trying to deal with in this particular series. Okay, so the idea when an atheist comes to you and asks you to prove God exists, the first thing we have to hold our hands up and say, I can't demonstrate with observable, testable, empirical evidence that God exists.
Alhamdulillah, halfway there.
Okay, so that's it depends what you mean, right? Because there's a layman term for prove, which is typically give me your reasons for believing, but non-philosophical or non-mathematical people will say the word prove, i.e. give me the reasons that you believe. A philosopher or a mathematician knows that proof, in the strict sense of it, is a much higher bar, like a mathematical proof that you wouldn't have. That's true, but most people that are speaking are lay people, and they don't necessarily see a differentiation. When they say prove, it's like, give me the reasons you believe. That's what they actually mean. If you ask somebody that, especially if you ask somebody that's philosophically literate or has looked into it a little bit, and I'm looked into it just a little bit, I'm not a philosopher, I wouldn't say prove your God. I said give me the reasons why you believe, or demonstrate your God exists. And what I mean by that is not a mathematical proof, unless you have one, but give me the reasons that you think are compelling that would convince somebody that's a non-Muslim in this particular case.
Yeah.
Just can't do it. Just as you can't reverse it. You can't demonstrate God doesn't exist.
Okay, that might be the case for some gods, but if your God has what somebody might consider is contradictory attributes, or there's some logical contradiction, and you can point that out and there isn't a sufficient response to it, then you can demonstrate that. So there are some atheists that actually believe they can demonstrate a particular God or gods do not exist, but those will be specific gods that have specific attributes where they feel there's a contradiction. And if you believe that your God cannot be contradictory, and yet a contradiction is pointed out, that would falsify that God. So it depends on the atheist, but there's not many atheists that go down that route.
Well, there's one more point I quickly want to make. Yes, I can demonstrate that specific gods can't exist. The other thing is, he doesn't understand evidence. Okay, if I don't see or hear a plane, but I can infer that there was a plane because I can see the contrails. And then on top of that, I can also say, hang on, this was not a meteorite or something because it's curving away to the right. That's what only an aeroplane can do. No meteorite can do that. So I can, from this bit of information or these two pieces of information, infer what this actually was. And this is exactly how I can say that a specific God, yes, does not exist. And the other thing is, this is logical thinking, okay? If I say nothing exists before it has been demonstrated to exist in the real world, in the natural world, in the macro real world, I'm not talking about quantum physics over here, okay? Then this is correct. So unless you show me that a god or a goddess exists, I do not have to go and say, yes, they exist. It's the same thing with unicorns or dragons or whatever. Unless you demonstrate one, they don't exist. And that is what you need to accept right from the word go. I can very well say this specific God doesn't exist, and I can say all gods have no evidence for their existence. And that's the end of story. That's what he needs to understand.
Yeah, and I'm surprised as well, because is the Quran not evidence of Allah's existence? And that's something that is a material thing, if you like, in terms of it being recorded. And if that recording is entirely accurate and reliable, that to me, if you were a Muslim, you would have to accept that as evidence. I mean, the book itself is not evidence, but if you could show that what it says about the world is in fact true, then that would demonstrate that this Quran could have only come from a God if it was that magnificent, that no human could have done. So I'm kind of surprised that he's saying that. But maybe he's thinking of a philosophical or mathematical proof, and that's fine. I'm quite fine with somebody saying I can't prove it in a philosophically absolute or certain sense or mathematical sense. That's fine. But demonstrate, give us the warrant for believing, what your reasons are for believing it. That's what we're really asking. And that's what most atheists are asking when they say prove your God. Even though they use the word proof, maybe they can change that word. But if you understand what they mean, I mean, I don't think it's worth equivocating on that unless you notice them saying something where they are equivocating between a layman's term of proof and a mathematical term. Then you could point that out. But if they just say prove your God, what they mean is give us good reasons for what you believe.
And why so religious? Yes, indeed. If somebody wants me to believe that something exists, they have to show me that it exists. Otherwise, I don't believe it. If somebody says to me, I have a car that can go 500 kilometers an hour and it's only using 2 liters of petrol or whatever, I don't believe it until I have evidence for the existence of such a thing. So why would I believe it? There's no reason to. So
I think
yes,
the only
that's exactly.
only thing I'd say where that stops is then they're going to try and go down the route of, how do you know your father's your father? Have you got evidence? And the only evidence you could prove is like what, almost like testimonial evidence. So I'd be careful of phrasing it like that. I understand what you're saying, but if you phrase it like that, potentially they can go on to and say, look, we've shown that there's something you believe without evidence. I think there are things we believe without evidence because we just haven't thought deeply enough about it. I think the difference is if we were presented with evidence to the contrary, we would change our mind. So I might believe that aliens exist. I haven't seen the aliens, but I believe it's a possibility, right, that aliens exist.
Yeah. Is there a reason? Do I have a reason to believe this? And this is, or a good reason? Do I have a good reason to believe this? This is my standard way of phrasing it. I have no good reason to believe gods or goddesses exist, so I don't. This is my standard phrase. And this is exactly, and this is good that you're pointing it out. Do I have a good reason to believe my father is my father? Yes, I do. So is this called evidence?
Okay, and then you'd have to
know.
give your reasons for that, right?
I can. I look like him.
Exactly.
I have the nose. I have this, and I have the DNA. And
you
blah,
could give
blah,
into
blah.
reasons, etc. I think if that comes up during this thing, I can't remember if it does. We can deal with that more in depth because I think that's a very bad analogy anyway. But I don't want to hold on to it at the moment. We'll come to that if it gets crossed here. I know it comes on at some point, and then we can deal with it then.
Okay. So because obviously you can't prove something doesn't exist. Makes no sense. So, but if you try to say it doesn't exist, then you're making the claim, so it's on you. So anyway, so what we do though is we believe a creator exists, and when I say believe, I'm using the word as its synonyms like accept, convince, trust, convict. And
just one thing. Notice he doesn't use the word faith here. Okay, so by that, I hope that's the case, that he thinks there's a difference between faith and belief or accept, whatever the terms are. So if somebody in his position gets to the point where they have to say, okay, I believe it on faith, then that is a lower standard than a mere acceptance or a belief. Now, I'm not saying he has done that, but if he were, he specifically excluded the word faith And I think for good reason, because that is the last refuge that a theist can have when all their good reasons have been exhausted or rebutted or whatever the case is. Then they go, or at least some of them, then go to faith, which is, in my view, believing things without good reasons and evidence, or in the face of, reasons to the contrary.
And that needs a proposition. So the proposition is a creator exists. We then look at the rationale behind the reasons, and this is the key, you see, it's the reasons why you believe this thing is true. Because what happens as soon as you say to an atheist, I believe, oh, they get so excited. Tooth fairy comes out of the pocket, Father Christmas, fairies at the bottom of the garden, all of this kind of stuff. Because they think once you say belief, that's open season, then all beliefs, everything's acceptable. Well, no, that's not the reality. Because what you have to do, you have to have reasons to support your belief. Because if you don't need, because the first thing you have to accept also is a belief could be true without proof. So someone could believe something, have no proof to support that belief.
He thinks this is profound.
But that doesn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as you point out, that is of course trivially true, but then they would believe it. It would be like it would be a belief based on like almost like not a gambler's fallacy, but you just happen to believe it. You were lucky in believing that. You could have had a different belief, and I'm sure we have. If we go underneath, all of us would probably have beliefs that we haven't necessarily got a good justification for, and it might, in fact, as he points out, be in accord with what reality is, but we didn't have a reason. But that's not a good belief to have necessarily. So if you have that, that's fine, but it's not a good one. It's not something that you're going to try and defend, because if you don't have good reasons, then you should reevaluate that, or at least go to the point of I'm undecided. If you had a belief that fairies at the bottom of the garden existed, and somebody said why, and you said, well, actually I don't know. What you really then should do is either go to the undecided or agnostic position, or go to the atheist position. I dismiss that claim until I've got good reasons for believing it.
But something I realized yesterday, that he says his good reason to believe if everything is correct is because of the Quran. That's what he says. 1,400 years, people have tried to shoot holes in it. Nobody's ever managed to show something. Now, something I noticed last night, we know now, since June, that the Quran has holes in the narrative, that it is unreliable. So everybody has to accept that it is unreliable. Has it made any difference to Muslims? Do we see a huge wave now of Muslims leaving because they realize the Quran is unreliable? No, they just find a different justification. So they are never honest in saying, well, we have a reason, and that is the Quran, and if the Quran is not real or not reliable, then we need to leave. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen. So how is he going to justify his belief if he says, well, it's the Quran? Now we know it's not the Quran. What is he going to find now? He has to jump now. And this is what I've realized, that it's not about evidence. It's not about something is there that gives me a good reason. No, it's just the belonging. It's just we are part of a gang, and we are all one ummah, and this is what they have. There's nothing else. They're just lying to themselves, trying to justify their beliefs, and that's all they have.
Yeah, I don't think they believe they're lying to themselves. They are guessing. I'm charitable in the sense that I think they honestly believe what they claim to believe. It's not like they know that it's false and they are telling people that it's true. I mean, there might be some people, I can't read people's minds, but if I'm going to be charitable, I'm going to say they actually believe what they claim to believe is true. So it's not like they're being deceptive knowingly. And that's the difference. If they were, or we could demonstrate that, then I'm going to come down on them, somebody like a ton of bricks. But at the moment, I'm not in their minds, and it's either their misunderstanding of lack of grasping a particular topic that lets them continue believing, and that's one thing. But I couldn't call that lying, because I can't say that they know for sure, or they are convinced that what they believe is untrue. All right, let's go on.
It's not true. It could still be true. So you have to first establish that principle. And you atheists, you need to accept that principle. I mean, don't just say, oh, no, a belief needs proof, just to win the argument. Because like I've said many times, there's many things you go through in your life that you believe to be true, but you don't require any proof for. So, for example, when you jump on an airplane to go on holiday, you don't need the pilot to demonstrate to you and prove to you he's a pilot and he's capable of flying a plane.
Okay, so let's quickly deal with this. It's something called background knowledge. If you have background knowledge on something, you already have some justification for accepting it without asking for quote unquote proof, or let's just say good reasons. I want to stay away from the word proof unless you're talking about a mathematical proof. So you're not going to ask the pilot, let me see your certificate. Can you get in a simulator and show me that you can fly? Because you have background information that almost all pilots are well trained that can handle an aeroplane. But this is information acquired through induction and through the history of pilots flying planes. Okay, so we have good reasons to accept that. So the belief has got some warrant. It's not as if you're believing it without any, quote, good reasons. It's background knowledge, and that serves as a good reason in and of itself, especially if it's highly reliable.
That's why it's called justified belief.
Yeah, that would raise to the level of knowledge. So if you said it's a justified belief, you'd now be saying, I know this is the case. And I think we could say that about a pilot. I know this pilot can fly the plane. You haven't met the pilot. You haven't seen him specifically doing it, but the background information would allow you to be justified in claiming that either I believe or the highest standard, I know this pilot can fly the plane. Do you know with certainty? No, but that's not a standard that anybody can meet. And I think it's a red herring, and it's self-destructive if you're trying to go down that route anyway.
Can you see the chat?
I see you're both still scared to face Cebu. You're entitled to the yeah. I mean, he's not saying anything useful here. If somebody has something substantive in the comments, I'm going to deal with it. We've got limited time, so that sort of response I just hear a lot. Right, this is obviously not people who are thinking clearly, and that's fine. But I'm looking for something substantive. Happy to respond to any substantive comment. But that sort of vacuous comments, just
And by the way, I was here. I was facing Subwa. I talked to him. I mean, I've destroyed him in a couple of videos, but now I went face to face and did the same thing again. So what do you want?
Well, he wasn't even on when you were on, so he had a
no, not yesterday. I'm talking about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, let's carry on. We've got a long way to go, and this race is
we're
going to
talking
take
a lot.
us
Yeah.
3 hours. Yeah.
You believe he's capable of flying the plane. When you go to the doctors, and that doctor gives you a prescription for some medication for some illness you may have, you don't say, oh, sorry, sir, before you subscribe that medication, can I see your qualifications, make sure you're qualified to do this thing? Of course you don't. You believe he's qualified to do this thing. You don't need no proof. You believe your parents are your parents. You believe your father is your father without needing him to say, sorry, son, here's a DNA test we did, just so when you ask for the proof, I'm your father, here it is. No, of course not. This is ridiculous. What problem happens is as soon as you bring a creator into the equation, all of a sudden now you want proof.
Okay, let's deal with this very quickly and stop so we move on, because we could labor the point if we needed to. There isn't background information of a creator, and every creator that human beings assert differs from every other one. So when you say a creator, that's disingenuous, because you have a specific creator in mind. And if your creator does in fact exist and has done what you said, then every other creator is falsified. So it's not the case that it's a creator. In your case, it's Allah. In a deist case, it's just a deist God that got the universe started but hasn't interfered or communicated with humans. In the Christian case or the Hindu case, they have specific creators. So you are talking about your specific creator, and there's no background knowledge that has us believe that, hey, this is the case, that we have this, we can test this, etc. So the claim is very different. We do not have background knowledge, so the analogy is flawed on that basis.
Yeah? Now all of a sudden, this belief isn't good enough.
Correct.
So once you accept the principle that a belief without proof could be true, now you have to find a mechanics or a way to determine what's true or not in these beliefs, because there are many, many beliefs. And so it can't just be, if none of them need proof, that means they're all true? Of course not. They need reason. So I'll give you a little prime example. When I speak with Christians and they come to me and they say, Jesus died for your sins, I say, why do you believe that? Oh, because it says it in the Bible. Oh, really? Why do you believe the Bible is a reliable source of information? Because it's the word of God. Why do you believe it's the word of God? Oh, because it...
Did you want to say something there?
No, I'm just laughing.
Okay.
Why do you believe the Quran? Why do you believe the Bible is a reliable source of information? And this is the point. Stop bringing up the Bible. It's only going to fall on your own feet.
It says something, Timothy 2:3:16, all scripture is inspired by God. But that's written before the Gospels. So then it can't be referring to the Gospels. So therefore, why do you believe the Gospels are a reliable source of information? So what you do, you drill down into the people's belief until you find the assumed position. Once you find that assumed position, that's what you deal with. Yeah? So in any belief system, whatever it may be, you need to challenge the reasons for that belief.
Okay, I don't think there's any atheist who disagrees with that, as far as I know. And they may use different words that Hamza doesn't like proof or whatever the case is. But I think that statement is a trivially true one for anybody that holds beliefs that they think are true and thinks they have good reasons for. That is the case. So it's hardly a profound statement.
And if those reasons cannot be challenged or refuted, then you're in no position to say that belief is false.
Oh, okay, well, I'll come back to that. I won't go into that now because that goes down a rabbit hole. We'll deal with that hopefully at some point. I'm going to let that one go for the moment.
If you do, then you're the delusional one, because you're believing something then that's despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Because belief becomes delusion when overwhelming evidence refutes it.
All right, well, since he said that, let's deal with that. He claims, let's use an example. He claims that the universe had a beginning. Now, if you survey or if you look at or speak to experts in their field, Lawrence Krauss and whoever it may be, right, the cosmological community, they are divided on this question. There is no overwhelming consensus as to whether the universe had some sort of beginning or whether it's past eternal. Now, if the experts in the field are undecided, there's no consensus, and he's saying, hang on a moment, I believe that the universe had a beginning. And I say to him, what are your reasons for believing that? And he gives me reasons that are not sufficient. I can challenge him. Even though I'm undecided, I can challenge him and say, your reasons do not rise to the level that should warrant you believing the universe had a beginning. And in particular, because here are all the arguments against the universe having a beginning. And the cosmological community as a whole, who are experts beyond what you and I would ever dream to be, don't have a conclusive view on whether it had a beginning or whether it was eternal. So you are taking a positive position and your reasons are insufficient. So I can challenge it even if I'm undecided on that.
So that's the basic parameters of what belief is. So as a Muslim, alhamdulillah, Allah calls me in the Quran, Inna ladina amanu, oh you who believe. We are the believers.
Just stop there. Can you please remember this part where where Allah says in the Quran, blah, 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 blah. He later says, not once have we mentioned Islam, Quran, God, or anything like that. Yet right in the beginning, he's doing exactly that when it comes to belief. Now, the other thing is, if I say that I've got a goldfish, okay, that's a trivial claim, even if you live in a small flat. But if you now say, I own a horse in this little flat, then this is a stretch. But then when you say, I've got a tiger at home, that would somehow warrant a further investigation in my eyes. So claiming ownership of an undetectable dragon is then the equivalent of claiming gods or goddesses exist. So then you really need to provide that level of evidence, something that Carl Sagan made very famous in his days. So, you have to live with these things. You can't just say, well, any kind of evidence is good for me, and I'm looking at the Quran at what it says there. Well, then why do you believe what's in the Quran? It's exactly, you go down a rabbit hole of these things because you need to then provide evidence for the Quran. Well, it's written by a God. Well, you see, now you're getting circular. So
it's one assertion on top of the other, right?
Yeah.
You're going to assert one thing to try and justify another, and then you have to make another assertion to justify that, and that becomes problematic. But you're quite right? There's a different level of claims. Some claims are mundane, some are extraordinary. And the extraordinary claims are the ones that we're going to look at more critically than the ones that are mundane. If you say you have a dog, most people have a dog, we accept that that's, like you say, if you have an invisible dragon, that's an extraordinary claim. And we're not going to accept your say-so or eyewitness testimony for something like that. So the criteria are going to be more strict. They are going to raise in the situations where something is extraordinary, unusual, or supernatural, whatever term you want to use.
Non-Muslims are the unbelievers. See the word believe?
Hang on, Rob, just a we have somebody in the chat here. Von Ned Crater Atheists plan pop from Norton. Only want to serve. No. I don't know if you should be here. I don't know if you think that you are making sense. I don't know if you may. Okay, I don't want to be impolite, but
yeah. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's not get sidetracked there. Yeah. I know it's so easy to look in the comments and get sidetracked.
I'm looking for something in the comments. Book rubbish, not explain, naughty.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not fair to suggest that he's representative of all Muslims. I do think all Muslims lack critical thinking to some level, but I'm not going to say whether he's a Muslim, and may not be his first language. But he's not saying anything substantive there anyway. And because we've got limited time, otherwise, if you had 5 hours, we could deal with every one of those.
No, but it shows you the attitude. This is what I'm trying to show. It's the attitude that they think, even at this level, that they are making some sort of sense, and it's not. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we just need to pass that by. Otherwise, we'd never get past step one.
Unbelief. This is what we are, alhamdulillah. So I'm not going to go into that detail right now because I want to really, to be honest with you, if we can we leave Islam off the table for this particular stream? Do you think that's possible?
Well, you started with it, so it's very hard for them to keep Islam off the table. And we'll see later. Well, no, it doesn't happen in part one. We'll see later on in part two where you can't actually do that.
Doctor and Sabor.
I think they're both hypnotized there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to start with God first, and you have to establish that reality
he's saying
before
opposite.
you move on to revelation. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of the Dawah conversations become lopsided is because we mix revelation with God's existence, with everything, and it just becomes a mess. So you should always start with God first.
Yeah, that sounds like the opposite of what Hamza is saying. Keep God off the table, and he's saying start with God. Okay. Okay, maybe I've missed something there, but it doesn't sound. It sounds like he's agreeing, but he's actually saying the opposite. At least it seems like it, as far as I can tell there.
Alhamdulillah, because this is a process of getting.
I think actually, let's be charitable. I think what he means is we've got to start with the position of getting an atheist to believe in a God or gods.
Yeah,
ideally, what
so
you really want to say is, hey, we need them to believe in Allah. But before we can get to specifically Allah. Apologies. We've got to get them to believe in some generic God. And okay, you could do that in the sense of like a step-by-step process, but I think there's also a limit to that. And we'll see it later on with Hamza, where I think he's mistaken on one of his claims about this whole God thing, especially around, or not Hamza, or at least Sabur on the claim, or Hamza is the one that pushes it really about, believing in a God and, does evolution falsify a God. We'll come to that, hopefully.
Shahada. And to take the Shahada, the first thing you need to believe is what? La ilaha illallah. Now, unless you believe in a creator, there's no point me teaching you Muhammad Rasulullah. First of all, let's get to La ilaha illallah. So the first obstacle you'll have when you're speaking to somebody is whether a creator exists or not. So this principle that I'm establishing of belief applies to everything. So once you have this principle, you can apply it to religious things as well as irreligious things. So for example, why do you believe that pilot can fly the plane? Well, first of all, I don't think he'd be in that position if he couldn't. And I must have flown this plane before. So these are kind of reasons that support it. Now, no one can say, well, are you sure? You might have snuck on there. It's ridiculous, all right? And
it has happened, by the way. It has happened in Pakistan.
Yes,
they
there
found,
was that guy.
Yeah.
There was that guy as well. The movie was made about him with Leonardo DiCaprio. He wasn't a pilot. And he got on and flew an aeroplane. I can't remember what his name was. So it does happen, but I do agree that it's extremely rare. And I would not believe that a pilot could fly or claim to know a pilot can fly because of an anomaly. So I think, but that's fine. So it's not a big deal. But this is all trivially true. So
exactly.
what I mean by trivially true
example,
is it's obvious. It's a priori the case. So it's not like you're saying anything substantive here that we have to necessarily disagree with. And I think it's just taking up time that isn't necessary to state the obvious. I mean, he could have added here. And by the way, guys, every human breathes air. And you're going to go, well, how's that relevant? And this sort of stuff is, I'm not seeing how this is relevant. It's trivially true. Howard Hughes, thank you very much. Howard Hughes.
Father. Well, because I look like him, family testimony. I believe my mother was a chaste woman. I don't believe she slept around. So if she says he's my father, I believe he's my father. If you bring me a DNA test, I probably still refute that. I probably still challenge that. Because I believe my father.
But then you'd be bordering on being irrational. Then you'd be the ultimate skeptic that doesn't want to accept anything. But again, this is irrelevant. I think the main point here is that they want to say, but hey, you guys accept things without strong evidence, although we have background evidence, background knowledge on certain things. Why can't we do the same with God? And I think I've explained why you can't do that. There's an asymmetry. I love that word now from Dr. David Benetel. There's an asymmetry here. That standard doesn't apply to extraordinary claims.
Father's my father based upon my mother's chastity. That's the main thing, yeah? The doctors are doctors. Surely he wouldn't be sat in that practice, and all the people know there that this guy isn't qualified. He must be qualified, and the way he talks,
also
the way he
happened.
understands things.
Yeah. But again, it's an anomaly, and that wouldn't stop you from believing that with a high level of
Oops, you're cutting. Oh, you're not coming back. Oh. Oops. Why did Rob mute himself? Okay, Rob muted
Oh,
himself.
sorry,
I don't
I
know
was
what.
muted there. Can you hear me?
Oh, is that why? Because I was just saying, I wonder why you muted.
Yeah, no, I was just checking because you couldn't hear me. It automatically muted me there. I think I touched my mic and it swapped to another mic. Anyway, let's go on. I think this is all trivially true stuff here. There's nothing here.
So these are the reasons supporting all of these things, and that's how you determine belief on what is true and what can be dismissed. So this then, like I say, at this point in time, if you're speaking to an atheist and the tooth fairy, and I had one guy, I'll be giving an example. I was speaking to him in the park, and he said this to me: "Prove there's no invisible pink monkeys on Mars." Right? And he said this in such a smarmy, clever way. So, and I just said to him, "Why do you believe in invisible pink monkeys on Mars?"
Okay, but that's not the point. That's a red herring. Whether he believes it or not, it's not something that I do. So again, some atheists might do that. I won't bring up Russell's teapot or pink atheists or unicorns unless there's a good reason, and I'll use it as a reductio ad absurdum. In other words, I'll use it as a counter argument if somebody gives me a position to reduce their position to absurdity, to show them how that position reduces to absurdity if we're going to use whatever standard it is you want to use. So I don't use it a lot, but I'll normally use the unicorn example. But it's not that he has to believe in it. It's totally irrelevant whether he believes it. He's asking you, can you disprove pink monkeys on Mars?
He doesn't understand it's a conceptual question.
Yes, it's hypothetical, right? Conceptual or hypothetical question, and that's brought out to illustrate a particular point. Whether he believes or not is totally irrelevant.
Exactly.
And he was trying to be clever again, and he goes, "Well, yeah, I do. Really?" I says, "Why?" And then he was stuck, and he goes, "Well, I don't really. I'm just saying it for the sake of the argument." I said, "Okay, fair enough. Well, I don't believe in pink invisible monkeys on Mars. You don't believe in pink invisible monkeys on Mars. So why are we talking about pink invisible monkeys on Mars?"
Okay, presumably because the atheist thinks that, hey, that's his view is that your God is like that, and so he's giving you a reductio on that to say, hey, well, if you're going to believe that for no good reasons, or in his mind no good reasons, then he's going to present to you a similar claim in his mind. I don't like that example, and I think there are actually rebuttals that a theist can make that can actually answer that why God is different to, let's say, pink monkeys on Mars. I don't think it's overwhelming, but I think it's enough for an atheist not to necessarily bring up that equivocation. But that's the reason he's doing it, to say, hey, it's like this. And so whether you believe it or not, whether he believes it, but notice he didn't answer the question. And you've got to be quite careful with, and this is the other thing I noticed with certain apologists, if you give them something, if you say something out, if you volunteer information that isn't strictly relevant to the point, they latch onto it and off they go onto a side tangent because it allows them to get away from the main point. So as far as possible, you've got to be very disciplined in not bringing up something that, and I try to think of it, I'm not perfect by any stretch and I make mistakes as well, but I try to think to myself, let me not say something now that will take them off the track to allow them to go down a point and try and argue a red herring point that has nothing to do with the main argument. So I think we as atheists as well need to not say too many things that allows them to escape the main point. We've got to stay laser focused on the particular question. So he didn't answer the question. He just said, hey, well, I don't believe it. You don't believe it. Let's move on. Well, that wasn't the original question. He said, can you disprove it? And of course, the answer is no, he can't disprove it. That's what he should have said.
And that's the reality. So these tooth fairies and all this stuff go back in the pocket at this point. We're talking about a creator of heavens and earth. We're talking about the universe in its existence. That's what we're referring to. And we believe this universe had a beginning. We believe this universe had a cause. And we believe this cause was uncaused. And that's where we derive our beliefs from. But like I said, I don't want to go into it too much right now.
Okay, but you just did.
No, of course not.
You've given the core reasons why you believe that there's some teleological mind, and then you'll transition from that presumably to why it's your particular God as opposed to the Christian God or a deist God or a Hindu God. So you have actually laid out very broad strokes or very high level some of the reasons why you believe a creator, to use your term, exists.
And where does he get it from? From the Quran. Why do you believe the Quran is a reliable source of information? Whoops.
Yeah, and then we can go into that.
But he just made the same claim about the Bible. So he can go to a Christian and ask him this, but if I ask the same question to him, he says, well, you're not allowed to ask that.
Well, he would say that on this particular stream because he wants to avoid that. But you're absolutely right. That burden does stay with him. Well, why do you believe that's true? And then he'll give you his reasons, blah, 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 whatever that is. And then we can critique that. So you're absolutely right. And it's the same for an atheist in my view. You know, for me, if they say, why, and you did it on the stream anyway. Why you're an atheist? Why don't you believe a God exists? And we'll give the reasons why, right? So we all have some level of warrant or burden to discharge if we have thought about the beliefs and we feel like we've considered it and we've got good reasons for believing something, then there is a warrant and somebody is entirely justified in asking you why you believe X. If you haven't thought about it, you say, well, actually, I haven't thought about that. It's a good question. I'll have to think about that. And at that point, somebody should go, okay, fair enough. If they're intellectually honest and charitable, they go, okay. You know, if somebody hasn't thought about something or they don't have the information, trying to rinse them or school them or whatever the case is, which we'll get to at some point, is disingenuous. So let it go at that point.
But to establish the principle, alhamdulillah. So now it's over to Sabur, who's going to deal with the second argument about evolution, as if this somehow demonstrates or is some evidence against the existence of a creator.
So can I, before you start, so I just want, did you want us to, because there are some things, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Hamza. There are some things I know that atheists would say automatically to that.
It's a shame that they sidetracked on this because this made the whole intro much longer now. They should have gone through the whole intro and then they could have done this if they really needed to, or actually bring the atheist in earlier. So hopefully they'll learn from this and Imran won't jump in with his version of what he thinks atheists have said because he's obviously heard that. That's fine. But hear it from the atheist or do it afterwards. Otherwise, it prolongs the whole intro for like an hour and 8 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
So one of the things they would say is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Well, it's not like a normal claim. This is an extraordinary claim. And often people say this. So I was just wondering what either of your views on that would be and how you'd approach that particular question. Because I'm sure that's... And what I want to do is I want people to get into the real arguments and these superficial type of questions that we can sort of just sort of maybe here.
Okay, again, so if I was speaking to Imran and say, why is that superficial? Listen, as you listen through this, listen to how many claims the guys make that they don't ever substantiate. It's superficial. Why is it superficial? What's your reasons, your evidence, your argument for suggesting that the claim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary? Why is that superficial? Right? He doesn't give a reason. It just moves on. And they do this a lot. And you've got to really fine tune your brain to hear the claim and then ask them for the reasons. Because what they do, some of them at least, is then they'll shift the burden to you. I'm going to make a claim now and I want you, this is one of Sabur's favorites, I want you to refute it. No. You make a claim and you give the reasons why you think the claim is true. Then we can discuss it and I can potentially rebut it or refute it or whatever the case is. But don't make a claim and then shift the goalpost that I have to do, that I can do the same thing. That's not how you do an intellectually honest discussion.
I don't think it's an extraordinary... Me personally, I don't think it's an extraordinary claim, to be honest with you.
Okay, I've just explained it.
He doesn't believe that God is an extraordinary claim. Yeah. So the question immediately...
You're muted again. Stop touching the microphone.
Sorry, my fault.
You need to stop touching yourself,
Immediately the question
Rob.
I'm going to ask is, what would count as supernatural for you? Or what would count as extraordinary for you? If you don't think it's a supernatural or extraordinary claim, God, what would be an extraordinary or supernatural claim? Let's see what your foundation is for making that. Either we have to discuss that to come to an agreement, or you're going to agree that, in fact, it is a supernatural claim.
I believe this universe had a beginning. I believe this universe required a cause. I believe this universe needed to be uncaused due to the problem of infinite regression. So we have an uncaused cause of everything that exists. I believe this uncaused cause must possess power, more powerful than anything we can imagine to have caused what it's caused.
Well, that's not true. No, of course that's not true. It only requires enough power to create a universe. Anything more than that is your presuppositions or it's your assertions. And I would want to ask you why must that necessarily be the case? The only thing is God, Yeah, God just needs to be powerful enough to create a universe and communicate with whatever it created within this universe. That's it. Why must it necessarily be all powerful? And if your response is because that's what I define as God, well, that's your arbitrary claim. And somebody else can come along and say, well, no, I define God as something that is purely powerful enough to create a universe. How can you respond? How can you respond and say, no, your idea of a God is wrong. Mine is actually the right one. What's your argument for that?
I believe this cause must be intelligent because of what it's caused. Yeah. And I believe this cause must be conscious because it's chosen when to cause rather than it just being an effect of its existence. So for me, it's not extraordinary. For me, it's as rational as you get. You need a cause.
Okay, he's conflating irrational with extraordinary. And again, at this point, one would ask him, what is your definitions of this? As soon as you hear something where you're going, hang on a moment, the way he's using those terms is either incorrect or it's unusual. He's using his own private view of what these words mean. We do need to ask them, what do you mean by that? Because I don't accept the premise of what you mean by extraordinary. You've now either conflated it or equated it with rational. And supernatural or extraordinary is nothing to do with rational. They're two separate things.
The other thing that we need to do is we need to point out that, number one, it's an argument from ignorance. Just because he doesn't understand it, there's no point in bringing up something outside a complex thing, which is even more complex, to increase the complexity so that it becomes something that you can't refute. The second thing is, why would you think any of what you are claiming here? Why are you doing that? How many universes have you seen being created to know what it takes to create a universe? None. You have no clue what you're talking about. And as for, I mean, it just shows, well, we said we're not going to go personal, but it shows his inability to think, his restricted and limited thinking capability, that he says it needs to be sentient. Well, I can imagine something just sneezing into a tissue, and this is then a universe. It's just a tiny universe, which to us, because we are more tiny than this tiny thing, looks gigantic. And for somebody who is gigantic, it might be that small. So it's just your limited imagination that is showing here that you need to say, well, it needs to be sentient. No, it doesn't. There's lots of things that can explain it.
I mean, there are arguments that attempt to suggest that it must be sentient. He hasn't made them, right? So he's just claiming or asserting there is. If you look a little bit deeper, then, as you have stops, then there are people that try to argue why it's necessarily X, Y, and Z. But that's completely separate. And I don't think that he has the knowledge to do that anyway. So he's asserting it here, but without necessarily good foundations.
The other thing, okay, I can't stop this. You need to go and look where he gets it from. Because if you go and look in the Quran makes a total mess of this. The Quran is completely wrong here, totally out of whack. And then he says, well, this is how we know this. Well, you can't, because the Quran is totally wrong. So you can't make that claim.
Yeah, and scientists came to the multiverse through evidence pointing in that direction, the cosmic microwave background, because they did ask Pio that question. Okay, he might not have known that. But when Skydive interviewed the head of the WMAP satellite project, and he asked him, does the WMAP, the microwave background, is that evidence of any sort that points towards a multiverse? The guy said yes. This is the expert in the field of WMAP, the head project, right? So we're not saying that it's overwhelming evidence, but there is some evidence. So it's not like all scientists, atheists got together and went, you know what? We really, this universe from the beginning is a problem for us. We need to do something about that. Hey, I know, we'll just make up a multiverse. No. I mean, that's nobody in their right mind would really think that. So
it has to be uncaused. It has to be powerful, intelligent, and conscious. Ta-da! That's where we are. How is that extraordinary?
Okay, because the claim is that the being itself is extraordinary, not your reasons for it are extraordinary. The claim is the extraordinary, that there's God, the ontological claim, not your epistemic reasons for it. So there's a confusion between ontology and epistemology here, and it's the ontological claim that is extraordinary, not your reasons.
What's your alternative? A universe from nothing? That's extraordinary.
Well, that depends on what you mean by nothing, or a universe that has existed eternally in the past. And there are well-established models by people like Sir Roger Penrose that purport to demonstrate exactly that, and they haven't been falsified. So you can shrug your shoulders and ask the question as if there's no other possibility, but that just shows that you really haven't read any of the literature or understand any of the more nuanced points on this.
Because all you can do is say, God did it, God did it, God did it. Well, why don't you stop that and actually go and find out? Instead of making a claim which any child can refute, go and find out. Do it. Do the work. Instead of laughing about others who are doing the work and are trying to find out, you are the one who's being a silly fool. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Pia, just go and have a look on Skydive Phil's channel. There'll be one of the videos there where he interviews. It's a Greek expert, and he's the head of the, I think it's the WMAP project. And Phil asked him exactly that question. So go and have a look there. Okay.
I would say that's the claim that needs the extraordinary evidence, to be honest with you. What about you, Sabah?
I was about to say the same thing. So there's nothing wrong with the idea that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Okay, he's just said there's nothing wrong with that. Hamza has just said there's a big problem with that, misunderstanding ontology and epistemology. So again, Sabur is correcting him, but he's doing it in a very soft way, and either Hamza doesn't realize he's being corrected or he doesn't care. I don't know.
I don't think he realized. I don't think Hamza has the I don't know, the brain like capabilities to actually understand a lot of what is being said sometimes, really. Sometimes I think he's just he sometimes answers a question that was never asked, and says something which I think like is totally irrelevant. And I think, what the hell is this? I think he sometimes doesn't even understand it.
Is it extraordinary to assume inference, that the inference that design equals designer, or there's a effect, so there's a cause?
No, not generally speaking within the universe.
No, not really, because we do that in science all the time. We do that in detective work. We do that in historical cases.
We do that in science.
Yeah, he just means human beings.
So that's nothing.
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry, he's totally excluded from this group.
Okay, well, that's a separate point, I guess. But yeah, he's just saying the royal we, i.e. humans, scientists, whatever, detectives, whatever it is. Yeah.
There's nothing abnormal about that. What's abnormal is the idea that a event which is completely under normal circumstances, it would not lead to any form of order. Something like a mass expansion of the universe.
Okay, firstly, it's an inflation, and this is obviously his weak point and why he didn't want to debate this with Skydive Phil. By the way, he said this himself, so it's not like I am making the claim. When Skydive Phil wanted to have a debate, he wanted to have a debate on evolution. Skydive Phil said, okay, we'll do that, and then I want to have a discussion or a debate on cosmology. He said no. Basically, I think Skydive Phil actually showed me the email or told me about the specific interaction. He said, no, I'm not an expert on that. I'll get my friend from Pakistan or whatever it is to do that. So when he's not an expert, then he doesn't want to engage. But when he's on a panel like this, when there's nobody to challenge this, then he's happy making these assertions. So I think we've just got to be, if you're going to make the assertions, then defend them to whatever degree you can. And if you're wrong or if you need more information, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But don't say one thing, like you don't want to debate with somebody that you know has got expertise and then make the claims like it's been made here because you don't have anybody to challenge you on that.
This thing that they call the Big Bang, leading to order, leading to complex life developing, and also the human mind, which is able to access rationally the universe and also have morals and values and these types of things. That's an extraordinary claim, to claim all of this can come around by.
Really? That's interesting. I think the philosophers in the full papers will be very interested to know that. I've got it up in front of me right now, and I'll read it to you just quickly. He says it's an extraordinary claim. I'm sure I'll pass this on to the majority of philosophers in, and here, where is it? Here in knowledge, which is the claim. Here it is. Meta philosophy, naturalism or non-naturalism. This was the question that was asked of philosophers. Those that accept or lean towards naturalism, i.e. that there's no supernatural intent, 50.2%. Those that lean or accept non-naturalism, 25%, and other breaks down into various things I had to look at, 24%. So the majority of philosophers believe that it's not an extraordinary claim. So I will happily pass on to them, and they can have the discussion with you, Sabur, since you like quoting experts. And they will be very interested to hear that it's an extraordinary claim because you say so.
By pure chance. So in fact, when someone says the famous Carl Sagan saying that extraordinary evidence requires extraordinary extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, I would say, yeah, for sure, but that works very much against atheism and in favor of theism.
Okay, but that's your assertion. Your assertion is that all of these things are extraordinary by your undefined definition, and therefore we have the burden of proof. Well, good luck with presenting an actual argument that demonstrates that. Your assertion that it's the case is an appeal to intuition. Now make the argument. Now they'll try fine-tuning and all of those sort of things, and we have rebuttals. Not just when I say we, the people who are experts in the field, like Sean Carroll and many others, have got rebuttals to that are pretty strong. So
yeah, but this is the attitude, and he's right. It's much easier to not do anything, to not think, to stop thinking, to stop researching, and just say, "Yeah, God did it, finished." It's much easier. He's right.
Well, he's obviously making the claim that it's extraordinary the other way around, and I think he hasn't got evidence of that. That's just his assertion. He's welcome to try and do that, though, and I will certainly, the fact that 50.2% of philosophers believe in naturalism, then obviously these guys are all mistaken, and they need to rework their view and think, well, we're believing things that are extraordinary.
Yeah, but it needs more work to prove that natural, phenomena have natural causes. So, you really need to do something to actually go and demonstrate this. What he can do is just say, no, God did it. It's what I'm saying. Yes, it is extraordinary because you need to do more stuff to do it. You need to use your brain.
Yeah, somebody asked in the chat there who that's 931 people. I'm not sure where you're getting 931 from. In the survey itself, the full papers, it was 1,619 out of 3,226 philosophers that answered that they accept or lean towards naturalism, which is 50.2% if you work it out. So that's the full papers, and it's over 1,600 people out of the 3,000 odd. So a little over 50% there.
Yeah, I would agree. And the funny thing is, when one guy said that and dropped the mic as if he's made some profound point, and then wait a minute, relax. Anything else that you would challenge on what I said?
I completely agree, because fundamentally you both said exactly what I was thinking anyway, in the sense that to claim that the universe requires a cause, we can analyze what that cause might be, is actually the reasonable thing to say.
No, it's
the unreasonable thing to say.
It's not. It doesn't explain anything. It just substitutes complexity with even more complexity. It doesn't explain anything. It's just a claim.
Well, if the universe had a beginning, then there was some cause for its beginning. If it was past eternal, then there's an infinite set of causes. But his view that the universe must have a cause in one sense or another, depending, that may or may not be the case. But you haven't established that the universe had a beginning to begin with, whatever that is, however the universe came into. So if it were the case, then, okay, yes, it needs a cause if it came into being. And even if it was eternal, it would be just a past set of infinite, cause and effect scenarios. But you haven't demonstrated the most important point, which is your assertion that the universe must have been caused. And by the way, how did that happen? Kun vaya kun. God created it out of nothing. A concept, by the way, which I think is incoherent and irrational. And I could expand upon that at some point, and I have done in the past.
Says actually this universe doesn't require an explanation, that it came from.
Nobody says it doesn't require an explanation. Who can you point to anybody that has expertise in this field or philosophy or cosmology that says the universe doesn't require an explanation? Just one person, please.
From nothing. And now that's unreasonable. So which of those two would be the extraordinary claim? The extraordinary claim would be the universe from nothing. And this is the position.
Well, that depends on what you view. And Lawrence Krauss has done a book on it. Now, if you accept his definition of nothing, then a universe is not just possible, it is guaranteed if there's a past eternal amount of time.
It's inevitable, yeah.
Yeah, but again, people like these guys will reject Krauss's version of nothing, which is the absence of energy, matter, and time. Now, in the past, people would have said, yeah, that's nothing. But now we know that the quantum vacuum is inherently unstable and will give rise to a universe, a fluctuation which would eventually become a universe potentially like ours, or at least a universe that lasts longer than a millisecond.
Yeah,
and it's guaranteed
but Rob, we can't
to
demonstrate
happen.
it.
Say again?
We can't demonstrate that.
No, what we can say, as Krauss has said, or what he says anyway, is that it's guaranteed if the universe is past eternal, that will happen. How long it'll take, no, nobody can say that. But it is, the fact that it's unstable means that at some point, if the past is eternal, then a universe will come into being. But they won't accept that universe from nothing. Right, but in fact, they do accept it because they claim that God created the universe from nothing. They, of course, ignore the material version of the cause and they go, well, if God can do it, well, that's fine. No, hang on a moment. It's not fine. And, we can argue that point. I have done with hijab, and obviously he didn't really have anything substantive to say in response.
Position, unfortunately, atheists will find themselves in if they persist with that perspective.
But the other thing is, Scott, I feel has educated at least Hamza and Imran on this, which is, this is the other baffling thing for me. He went through this at a much finer, more detailed level than I can do, and either they didn't understand it or they've just rejected it, which is, again, kind of very sad for me, because you had somebody that really understands this topic and he went through this with them, and he's still saying this, 2 years later? This is problematic for me. They'll hold on to the dogmatic beliefs even when experts will explain to them why they shouldn't be saying this.
But there's something else wrong here, and this is what I don't like about Imran, or about these guys in general, because an atheist will question your reason why you believe this. What you are then doing is you're saying, well, cosmologists are saying something, but this is not something that I'm asking you. So what you are trying to do is you're trying to evade the whole question that I'm asking you by pointing out something that somebody else said. And this is not honest. This is not something that is fair, because a lot of people will not pick that up. A lot of people will not know what to do with this, because they will think, well, now I need to justify this. No, we don't. I'm just asking you to justify your point, and you don't tell me then to justify somebody else's point. That's what we need to learn as well, these kind of tactics.
So I completely agree, 100%. So that's a question that sometimes is put forward because it was said famously by Carl Sagan, as Brother Sabor said, but actually doesn't hold any weight when actually discussed.
Yeah. See, that's one thing I wanted to do here. This is where I spoke about the factory reset. Atheists use these cliches all the time, and they're tired, they're old, they're finished. This is the whole reality of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to say, look, you can't get away with this anymore. You've got away with it for a long time. I've had Muslims telling me they were scared. They didn't mind debating Christians because they've been watching Ahmadiyya and all of this kind of stuff, yeah? But when an atheist came, they were scared. But alhamdulillah, they said, no, we're watching the EFR videos and that. We're not afraid anymore.
Well, I'm glad they've got more confidence. So if any of those atheists that are watching the EFR videos want to come and speak to Stops or myself, or indeed any other atheist, then by all means, it's an open, if you're a Muslim and you're watching this and you want to come on, you're welcome to come on here and have a conversation, or come onto the Gin and Tonic show. We're always asking people. It's funny how the brave Muslims that are now ready to take on atheists don't seem to want to do it, or at least not with us. And we keep asking. People suggest we're begging. We are inviting Muslims to come on, especially those that have watched EF Dawah and feel like they now are equipped to, quote, deal with atheists. We're here to be
reset
quote,
us.
dealt with.
Please reset us.
We know how to deal with them now. We know how to start with belief flex straight away. So all of a sudden they're on the back foot. It's not about evidence anymore now. It's about belief, and it's about rationale and reason. And like, for example, I did that talk with the brother, I don't know if you've seen it, Sabor, the blind spot of science, with the Eton brother from, the brother from Eton, 18-year-old kid, looked about 26, right? And he came to speak to Muhammad Ijab, but I kind of grabbed a hold of him. And his conclusion was this: your reasons for believing in a creator are 100% logical.
Wow.
Yeah, because it went through everything, and he said, I can't do any of it.
Well, I haven't watched that video, and it depends what you mean by logical. Do they have a contradiction? Not necessarily have a contradiction. Are they good reasons? That's a different story. It depends when you go into it, because on the face of it, they're not irrational, i.e. they don't, as far as I can tell, and Stops, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they don't violate a law of logic. And if that's your standard, that's a very low bar, right? That's a very low bar in order to feel good about yourself. All you need to be is rational. Well, congratulations. We all think we're rational. And unless, you can demonstrate something's irrational, that isn't a bar to pat yourself on the back with. That's the minimum to get started. So that's nothing to stand on a pedestal about. It's trivially the case.
No, what is happening is they are defining a foundation, which then, if you take this definition, then it becomes logical. But the fallacy is the definition at the beginning, because they are saying, we know that a God exists, we know that the Quran is 100% correct, we know all these things. So once you define all these things into position, then it becomes a logical consequence, yes.
Okay, but I think he was talking about like the very high-level claims about his his inferences about the universe having a beginning and all of that. I'm not sure, unless you want to point out, maybe I've missed something. I don't see a contradiction in that line of thought if it were the case. But I agree, if you're going to believe that the Quran is, the word of God, and that you know it, justified true belief, that is a strong claim, and that would need, quite a bit of justification.
Substantiation.
But the higher level claim that, hey, universe, I think where it can be challenged, again, it's not illogical. I don't see a contradiction in it, believing that a God could have created the universe. It's just that we don't see good reasons. And your assertion that is likely the most probable origin of the universe hasn't been established, and especially hasn't been established by the majority of cosmologists. So when you try to establish it, I'm looking for some reason why you know more than the vast majority of cosmologists on Earth, and I'm not hearing that.
And he came from a proper philosophical, it was a proper philosophical battle.
Okay, but he's 18, so how much does he know? Maybe he is, and I'm not saying he's not philosophically, an expert. But again, what you're hanging your hat on is that he said that your argument is rational. That is like I say, the lowest bar. That's you've literally got onto step one of the ladder, and you're congratulating yourself. Okay, that's fine if you want to congratulate yourself. The rest of us take it as a given that an argument needs to be rational. We're not patting ourselves on the back for presenting a rational argument. We take it as given. If you feel that you need to pat yourself, okay, fair enough. But I mean, maybe you need to look at your psychology there, in the sense of, like, why do you need to pat yourself on the back for something the rest of us take for granted? When you're going to go into a rational argument, of course you need to be rational.
Well, the reality was,
he was studying philosophy, and his name Sebastian. His name was. He was studying philosophy.
Sebastian. Yeah, really top lad.
Yeah, nice guy.
So when someone says that to you, your reasons for believing is 100% logical. That's saying your belief is 100% logical, and that's what Muslims need to learn. That the belief in a creator is 100% logic.
Okay, well, that depends on what the belief is. That depends. If you're just talking about the overall belief that a creator exists, that's not illogical. But it depends then, when you dig deeper down, what the creator is, what the attributes are, and is there something that forms a contradiction? If that's the case, either in your belief or your reasons for believing it, or the ontological claim itself, then you would be irrational. So it depends. That's just too broad of a statement. A creator exists. That claim in and of itself isn't irrational, but we need to look a bit deeper. But I do notice that he likes to go high level so that he can show that it's not irrational. Okay, but like I say, that's the first step of the rung. That's nothing, you haven't overcome anything particularly, unless you've got a view that atheists think that every theist belief, even that a God exists, is irrational. Then fine, but I don't know many atheists that start at that position, but I could be wrong.
We can move on to Allah, we can move on to perceptions, we can move on to the Prophet ﷺ, we can move on to the Quran, you can move on to all of these things. But the foundation of a creator kills it. And then when we have...
Okay, when you say kills it, all you're saying is that it's rational. Okay, but from it being rational to it being likely the case, and it's your particular creator, is Mount Everest, and somebody said it, I don't forget this, and you're climbing it with flip-flops, to use an analogy. You don't have the right equipment to get you to the summit, let alone over the summit. You basically can't get to base camp. But you started off in your flip-flops and you've taken the first few steps. And now you feel extremely proud of yourself that you've stepped into the snow with your flip-flops and you're looking up at the mountain here. You've got a long way to go.
We've only done a quarter of an hour of the video and we've been talking over it.
If you need to go, Stops, I'll continue and finish this part, and then we can do part 2 at some other point. You just let me know when you need to go, and that's fine, and I'll go through it. Otherwise, we won't get to an end here.
Because I've got now some comments on Subur and I've got so much. I've got another 2 pages of comments. Okay.
No, we can still do that. You mean you've got to go now, right?
Like in 10, 15 minutes, yeah.
Okay, as soon as you have to go, then, I can stop it if you like, or if not, we can, if I miss it, we could always talk about it on Gin and Tonic or something like. I guess I just want to try and get it out today, at least this part of it. But if you prefer us to do a second part on this, then I could do that as well. Let's see how much further we get, and then you can make a call.
Like, for example, the Ricky Gervais argument, like I said, there's 3,000 gods, you believe in one, I believe in one less God than you, as if that's a mic drop moment also. No, the reality is this: we don't just dismiss the other gods because we don't like them. We don't dismiss them because we weren't born in those particular countries. So I don't dismiss Ganesh and Vishnu and all that stuff because I wasn't born in India. In fact, I look at the rational rhyme and reason for it. I don't get it. So when you
Okay, but just because you don't get it doesn't mean that it's not true. The fact that you aren't able to comprehend something you necessarily doesn't make the ontological claim untrue. It just means that you may not have the capability, or I may not, or whatever the case is. But that's an argument from personal incredulity. I can't make sense of this, therefore I'm not going to believe it. Well, okay, you can go that route, but like I say, that's anybody could say that about anything, and I don't think that that's a good objection. And it's, like I say, an argument from personal incredulity. What you could say is, hey, no human being can explain this, and therefore I'm going to either withhold my belief, i.e. be undecided, or I'm going to take a position that I dismiss the claim until there's good reasons to believe it. But personal incredulity is not a good reason.
you go through this, you can easily throw out Thor, throw out Zeus, throw out what does Dawkins say? Someone on Mount Juju or whatever it may be. You can throw all of this away, but you're left with a creator, alhamdulillah. And then you have to move on to, has this creator communicated with us? And then when you look at people who claim to have communication from this creator, then you test their claims, then you determine their claims are true. Then you'll get the Allah, 99 attributes, all of these kind of things from that point. But when you
Let's leave God and the Quran out of it, right?
Yeah. Because you can only get to the 99 attributes from the Quran, right? There's no living human being that makes that claim originally from God, or that God communicated with. So the only way you can get that is from either the Quran or the Hadith or the Sunnah, Sirah, whatever it may be.
We're just dealing with the creator right now, inshallah. So so over to you. Evolution, man, that's the knockout blow. The atheists think this is ace card, man.
Evolution, man.
They got us.
Evolution.
I think just before that,
Let's let him talk, stop, so you can get some of your points out.
I think some of the points that you've said, they're really profound, because, even
Like, which point is profound? Maybe he'll tell us.
from a philosophical perspective, sometimes we can get lost in these very abstract arguments. But when you bring it down to these basic units that you make up the rest of the philosophical arguments from, that's where the atheist loses, right? And it's on these basic points that, okay, so how is it that the belief in a creator is not 100% logical? How is that?
Who's making that claim, though? It's a straw man claim. Who says it's illogical? And if the atheist does, then I agree, has a burden of proof to show that it's illogical. But that's not my position. It might be Stopps's, it might be somebody else's. But don't say that that's every atheist position.
Illogical? How is it irrational? When you make it when you get your conversation down to this fine, precise sort of narrative that, look, this is what we're trying to say. It's very hard for a rational atheist to deny it, unless they just want to, they just want to do a bit of showboating and stuff. So I'm really glad this, what's his name, Sebastian guy, he was willing to admit that, because I think, even it's interesting. I saw a debate between John Lennox, who's a Oxford professor, and Richard Dawkins. It's a very famous debate online. And it's very interesting because Dawkins says something which he wouldn't normally say, and something which I haven't really found in other works of his or lectures. When John Lennox was talking about the universe and the universe being, intricately designed and the order and this type of thing, Dawkins said the general idea that there's a creator, a deistic creator, meaning a creator that created the universe but left it to run on its own, right? Not a creator that intervenes in the laws of nature, but just like a deistic creator. He says this is something that you can make a rational, respectable case for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's
Why is that surprising?
You can,
To
of course you
anybody?
can.
Yeah, who is that thinks you can't do that? They're saying it as if nobody believes this.
Yeah. I don't
why
know
would
what
you-
he's on about.
Who have they been speaking to that they think that this is somehow surprising?
No, I
not
know what it
something
is.
I would accept, but the idea that God, the creator of this entire universe with all of its stars and its planets and everything, would come down to earth and die on a cross is petty. Yeah. So you see, a lot of the dialogue, narratives that come out from new atheists, they don't just come out from a perspective that God is irrational. They also have religion intertwined.
Again, point to one new atheist that says God is irrational. and we can go and look at whether he's in fact said that, because we've got to be very skeptical of Sabur's claims. That's my default position. He's been caught out many times making claims like this, and it shows that he's either half true or he's cherry picked or it's completely false. So let's be very skeptical of the claim. But if there are new atheists who's saying that the belief is irrational, which belief is irrational and why are they saying that? And then we can talk about it.
Because some of the things that they found hard to believe as Christians, they just see those as the concepts of God, and they're not willing to accept that. Some of them not willing to accept that those concepts are totally independent from the general belief in God. So you can.
Okay, but what's the general belief in God got to do with it? Yes, you could have a general belief that a God is rational, but that a particular theistic God is irrational, depending on the claims, right? You've got to check what the theistic God is. What's the problem with that?
Believe in God, but not believe in religion. These are two different things, right?
Yeah,
Sorry?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that's what we have to do.
And this is a very interesting segue into Darwin's belief, right?
Oh.
So Darwin was a deist, right? He was somebody who believed that God created
Just shout when you
the
want me to
world
stop.
and left it to be. God was like an absent landlord, right? From his perspective, that God didn't physically intervene and do these things. Now, what's very interesting is if you look at the belief of Dawkins and co, and you look at the belief of Darwin, you see that Darwin would not have agreed with Richard Dawkins and the New Atheist.
Okay,
Oh yes, okay. Just hang in there. I mean,
Go
this is crazy. I don't know why he doesn't understand it. He's got this craving, this thing to mention Dawkins. Okay, now
Yeah.
Professor Richard Dawkins operates in his environment as a biologist. Okay, he is not in all parts of the world. He addresses his area in his environment, which is a Christian environment. So he brings up examples for Christianity. And Professor Dawkins is not a god. Even though Sabur seems to think that we see him as such, he is not. There are things that I disagree with him. So stop bringing up Professor Dawkins. He's done great work in his field, which is biology. He's not a philosopher. And he himself says, of course, people are going to criticize me for my philosophy because I'm not a philosopher. I'm a biologist. So why do you want to try and drag him into philosophy when he's not a philosopher? Now, this is one note I made. Sabur is the typical 2D thinker, unable to go beyond his own limitations, because a philosopher will criticize the philosophy of a biologist. And this is what he doesn't understand. This is why he expects everything from Dawkins, because he is shit scared of Dawkins. That's it.
I think the other reason is they see Dawkins as like our version, and they'll say it at some point, our version of Muhammad. And nothing can be further from the truth. We will agree with things that we think Dawkins is correct on. We'll either disagree or critique him if we think there's things we don't agree with. And I'm sure there is. I don't agree with everything Dawkins says. You might not either. But he's not our prophet. And anybody who says that is disingenuous, bordering on being dishonest. But this is, and I'm not saying that he's necessarily doing that, but to pick out Dawkins on something that is not his expertise and then to challenge him, and more importantly, telling us about Darwin. Who cares what Darwin's personal beliefs were in a deist? The only thing that people rightly look at Darwin for was his idea of natural selection as a driving mechanism for common descent. That's the only thing. I don't care, and whether he was a racist or whatever. That's all bad things. That's not a concern with regards to his evolution. That's what he's known for. So nobody cares. It's like a straw man. Why should we care what Darwin's personal belief is?
Here we go.
Yes, at all, right? Because the way they see God is always irrational. It's this, it's that. The thing with him is he believed in a God when he published his theory in 1858 at the Royal Society, a year before he published it publicly. He explicitly believed in God. And this is according to his biographers, and there's lots of evidence for this. There's a book called Darwin and God by Nick Spencer, where he goes over this in a lot of detail, right? When he published his book, and then he published his other works, he still believed in God. His belief in God was rattled by the problem of evil.
Okay, I need to go.
Right, which is a good segue.
Yeah, that's a significant problem, by the way. Go ahead. Stop.
I'll see you later.
Do you want me to stop it now, or shall I carry on? How much more would you want?
No, you just carry on, because I mean I've got a lot of notes here. I mean there's another 2 pages, so it doesn't work, because it's just questions like, can Michael Ruse, with his personal opinion, can he be wrong? Yes, and everything
Yeah.
can change. Well, no, and this whole thing with naturalism, which he doesn't understand, and bringing two together, and all these other
Hopefully,
things.
I'll cover
I mean,
some of those at least.
yeah, but same with animal suffering. I mean, he brings it up himself,
yeah.
so I don't know what the hell he's
That's
talking
a good
about.
one.
And
All right,
he
Stopsel,
still
thank you so
talks
much.
about you and Sabua with PTSD totally lacking any information and things like that. I'm sure you can handle it. Have fun. See you later.
Thank you so much, and we'll be together on part 2. Thanks, Stops. Have a great afternoon. Okay, it's wonderful to have Stops with us. He's got to pop out, but I'm going to continue on. If you've got any comments, put them in the chat, and I'll try and pick them up. If you want to join me, then I don't mind having some company.
What Brother Imran's going to be speaking about. He could not understand how a benevolent, loving God could allow evil and suffering, right? And his son died at the age of 2. His daughter died at the age of 10. He suffered very severe health issues throughout his life, for which he had to get various types of treatment, which didn't really work. So he had this grinding problem. Why does God allow evil things to happen? So in the last decade of his life, he became an agnostic. However, he still said, in my wildest fluctuations, I was never an atheist from the perspective of denying God's existence. Now, online, you're going to find the exact opposite. You're going to find atheists saying, evolution undermines God. Darwin showed there's no God. You know, we know evolution is true, therefore there's no God. This isn't by accident. This is by design, right? So if you look at the most popular atheist book in the world, it's The God Delusion. The God Delusion is central argument, and it's called the central argument. You find it in the middle of the book somewhere, right? Around page 150 something. And the central argument of the book is essentially that Darwinism has gotten rid of design. That's the essential argument. And then the argument goes on to, just like Darwinism got rid of biological design, a future physical theory can get rid of physical design in the universe, and God therefore most likely doesn't exist. So what's interesting is that if Charles Darwin was reading The God Delusion, he would have been embarrassed, because he would have said, this is not what I said. I explicitly said, you can believe in my theory and believe in God.
Okay, but why should we care what Charles Darwin said? If you're a deist, you could probably believe in evolution and your God. If you're a particular theist who believes that Adam and Eve was created and not came from common ancestors, then you cannot believe in evolution. But why would we care? A lot has been learned since Darwin, and going back to Darwin is like going all the way back there, as if we have to hang our hat on everything Darwin says. No, we don't.
In fact, he said, you can believe my theory and not only be a deist, you can also be a theist. You can also believe in revelation. You can also believe, not revelation, you can also believe in a personal creator, which is theism, and believe in God, right?
Okay, but that, like I said, the only way you can do that is if you believe that the creator did not create humans or other animals ex nihilo or straight into existence. You have to believe, if you're a theist, that everything came through common descent. And whatever the cause was, if God got life started on the earth or whatever, you have to believe that if you're going to believe in evolution.
Explicitly said this, right? So what's interesting is, in an interview between Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss, which is on YouTube, by the way, and I've made a video on this, Dawkins says, you can believe in God and evolution. However, because there's a public perception that if you believe in God, then the belief in evolution is incompatible and evolution has undermined God, and it's much easier to show the evidence of evolution. That's why I use evolution, so then I can get people to become atheists. So he openly said this, right? And he's clearly showing that he knows evolution doesn't undermine God, but he's using people's ignorance against them to bring them to atheism.
Okay, this is a false claim. Let me read to you. And he does, in fact, in part two, we won't get to it today. He does actually play the video for Tom Jump, I think. We won't get to that, that critique or review today. And I wrote this down because I went to go look at the video and it plays in there. If you go watch the stream, you'll see him play it. He makes the assertion now, but then he challenges Tom Jump to critique Richard Dawkins as if Dawkins is our prophet or something like that. But let me read to you what Dawkins actually said, which you will see there anyway. Quote, if your aim is to kill religion, then since evolution is manifestly true, then there are people out there who really believe that that if you are an evolutionist, you've got to be an atheist. Then all I've got to do is persuade them of evolution, which should be comparatively easy since the evidence is overwhelming, and I'll turn them into atheists. Now, he claims that Dawkins is being dishonest because he's not telling them that they don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. But let's actually look at it. These are people who believe that God created humans and therefore evolution is false. And if you said to them, hey, but actually you can believe in it, you can be somebody like Kenneth Miller, you could be somebody like, what's his name, the genome fellow, his name escapes me now. You could be that. They're going to say, no, they are wrong. Dawkins is doing nothing immoral or anything else. These people already believe that evolution is untrue. And if you get them to believe evolution is true, then they would become an atheist, because in order for them to stay a theist, they would have to accept that evolution and theism can be true. They don't believe that. That is only true for people who are convinced they can reconcile evolution and theism. But it is in no way being dishonest. These people already don't believe that's the case. So all Dawkins is saying is, well, those people that already believe that, all I have to show them that evolution is true and it contradicts their belief, and then they would likely become an atheist. He's not covering anything up. He could say to them, hey, Mr. Theist, you know what? You can still believe in this. And they're going to go, why? But hang on, that contradicts the book. Why is he going to try and convince them that they should still be a theist and believe in evolution? That's not his job. And if they don't already believe it, all he's showing him that evolution isn't compatible with their belief in a God. That's it. So his claim here is undermined.
Right? So I think these things are very important to talk about. And later on, we can talk about the philosophy of science and why the philosophy of science shows that science isn't the be-all and the end-all and the main root of knowledge and doesn't undermine God. However, without getting into any of that philosophical realm, we know that the new atheists lie to people. In fact, I just want to give one last authority here, right? The number one authority in the world when it comes to biological evolution is Michael Roos.
Okay. Where's the citation that he's the number one authority? He is one of the senior editors at Nature. He is in no way the world's authority. And in fact, he has been critiqued many times by somebody that I think is an authority, Jerry Coyne, who wrote the book Why Evolution is True. If you go to whyevolutionIstrue.com and you look at the critiques there, why evolution is true. If you go and look there, he's critiqued what's his name? Michael Roos many times. So pointing out that firstly, you haven't demonstrated that claim is the case, that he's the number one guy. You've just asserted it, which is what you normally do, just make assertions and then hope that, your gullible audience will believe it. I won't, and I'll ask for the evidence and then show it. And even if he was the number one, he was like cited everywhere, and he's the most influential advocate for evolution. That's his only claim to fame.
You will find his books published all over the world by mainstream universities. He's an atheist, and he says about the God delusion that it makes me embarrassed to be an atheist. This book makes me embarrassed.
He's entitled to say that. If he gives a reason, maybe we'll agree or disagree with it. Is that supposed to be an argument against either Dawkins or his book or his main thesis?
Embarrassed to be an atheist, right? Now, why? Because that book is saying essentially evolution undermines God, when any biologist...
No, it's saying that evolution undermines a theist who believes that evolution is incompatible with their belief in a God. That's what it undermines.
Any philosopher of biology, any philosopher of science worth their salt knows evolution, just like any other scientific theory, like string theory, cannot undermine the existence of the divine.
Okay, that's not the claim. This is a straw man. It undermines the existence of a particular God who says that humans or other animals came into existence not from common design. So please be accurate and nuanced. Don't throw out straw men about some generic God. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what the claim is to undermine.
Yeah. So what we want to do today is, we may disagree with the atheist. The atheist may jump on, we may agree or disagree. But something I want any atheist to join, to first off agree on, is the new atheist narrative, which is global, right? Which is very hard to uncover, which is very hard to put back in the box, is based on a flat out lie, right? And that's the first thing I want any atheist who's joining me to add.
Well, I've just shown that it's not a lie and that it's your misunderstanding. So no, it's not a lie, but thanks for trying.
At least recognize, and let's speak about that first, because this is an elephant in the room which has to be dealt with.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, factory reset them.
Obviously,
Take
you're
them
going to
back.
agree, Hamza.
All
I don't
these
think
things
you
that
even
they've built
understood
up
what he was
thinking
saying.
they have some kind of rationale and reason behind. We have to demonstrate that they don't have this. And this is the point. We need to arm the Muslims with this information. So when they come up against an atheist, they know how to take them down in a nice way. Well, intellectually, should I say. I mean, I usually like to take the rug from the atheist within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, the rationale, reason, and logic is out the window.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to actually demonstrate that. Clearly, evolution is a joke. Well, your main man, Sabur, here doesn't think it's a joke. So maybe you need to disagree with Sabur because he doesn't think that it's a joke. So maybe you haven't watched enough of Sabur's, or in fact, any other person that's a theist that has some understanding of evolution. They don't think it's a joke. So either you're correct, Lubda, or Sabur, or other theists like Kenneth Miller, like Francis Collins are correct. Good luck with that.
They're preaching to me. they're making all sorts of claims because the rationale.
Just a quick one here. Why didn't I call into the show? Because our show on a Friday night finishes at 10 o'clock. I then have family commitments. If they do a show on a Thursday or earlier, then I will come in. There's your answer.
Chanel has left the building. All right. So would you say that's your main introduction to the idea that evolution doesn't undermine the existence of a creator?
Yeah, I would say that's.
Why would you say that? What would you say is that? What is it? Okay, let me put it this way. What does Dawkins say about evolution that implies that if evolution occurred the way they claim it does from a common ancestor and all this business, why doesn't that undermine the existence of a creator? I mean, I understand to a point that evolution is the response to the creator argument. So it's a kind of, well, we believe everything exists. How's everything here? And evolution is a kind of response to that as like a possibility.
Well, it's a scientific hypothesis that has been quite well demonstrated, whatever the mechanism is, because that's Sabur's main thing, right? Well, maybe it's not Darwin, maybe it's not natural selection or quote Darwinism. As long as common descent is true, the straightforward claim of the Quran is false. They're in contradiction. So you have to overcome the idea that common descent, which is the main mechanism, the main thesis of evolution, if you can show that that is false, good luck with that. I was shown the philosophers, about 50 philosophers of biology from a colleague of mine who does quite a bit of research into this. There's not a philosopher of biology who is not a intelligent design person. Anybody else, other theists, by the way, as well, there's not one of them who thinks that common descent has been disproven. It is the driving I don't want to say mechanism, but it's the underlying foundation of evolution. And whatever the mechanism, whether it's horizontal gene transfer or natural selection or whatever it is, whichever mechanism, or neo-Lamarckism, as Sabur likes to quote, or any of these other ones, none of them deny common descent. And if common descent is true, then the Quran that claims that man was created and it's not from common descent is false or is in contradiction with evolution. You cannot be a Muslim and believe that God created human beings without common descent and believe in evolution. That is a contradiction.
But I don't see how it becomes definitive.
Okay, so firstly, like you said, how is it definitive, right? Anything in science is bound to change, is bound to be in flux. Of course, observations don't change. We know, for example, the relationship between HIV and AIDS, and these are direct observations or these types of things. But when it comes to, say, a theoretical historical event, which is based upon inferences and some assumptions, then of course those things can actually change. Now, when it comes to what's his argument is essentially, we have an explanation for how life evolved, therefore we don't need a creator. However, the problem is, even if, and this is what philosophers or the likes of some biologists who are philosophically experienced would say, well, this is a category mistake between how and why, right? So if I say to you, you see this live stream that we're on, SteamYard, and Hamza's Den, the logo, and all of this, I explain mechanistically how everything works. I explain the connection between satellites, Wi-Fi, how the live stream is working. After all of this, I then say there is no intelligence between this behind this live stream, right? That I've explained how it works. I know how laptops work. I know how phones work. I've explained all the mechanics, and therefore there's no God. Therefore, no one made it. So essentially, he's confusing how and why. It's a category mistake, right? Now, that category mistake, it's compounded by another fallacy that he makes, which is the fallacy between, and this gets a little bit technical, but I'm just going to simplify it, between two different types of naturalism, okay? Now, if I'm here and I'm starting to have a heart attack, like I'm going to die, right? And then Hamza says, right, quickly, Dr. Imran, come over and help Sabur, right? Now, you are assuming that when we've been talking to Dr. Imran all this time, he's a medical doctor, right? What if he turns up and tries to give me a logical symposium of some sort? I'm a doctor of philosophy, actually. Well, we're going to say, well, that's just fallacious. We asked for a medical doctor. We didn't ask for a philosophical doctor, right? Or somebody who has a doctorate in chemistry or whatever. So when we are talking about naturalism, there's two distinct types. There's methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism, okay? Now, you may not know the full in-depth view, but what you need to know is, just like there's two different meanings of the word doctor, there's two different meanings of naturalism. Philosophical naturalism, methodological naturalism. Methodological naturalism is what science is based upon. Science is based upon the idea, and this is more so due in
Okay, I mean, maybe you guys, some of you know this. I know what he's talking about here already. I'm not sure what the point is that he's trying to make here. He's saying that there's a category error, but now he's going into the different philosophies of naturalism. Some atheists are methodological naturalists, like myself. Others are philosophical naturalists, which means that a God is entirely excluded from any possible explanation. A methodological naturalist just says that God is excluded from scientific inquiries. So there is a difference there. But so what? So it depends on the atheist. You have to ask them what version you are, and why is it particularly relevant. It depends on where the conversation goes.
In the late Victorian period, that anything that we study, it has to have a physical effect and causation, and we can't refer to the immaterial mind or God or anything like that, okay? That's not the same thing, that assumption is not the same thing as the belief that there's no God. One's an assumption, a working assumption in science. One is a belief that there is no God, which is philosophical naturalism. He confuses the two, which is why eminent atheist philosophers like Massimo Pigliucci, who's a very famous philosopher, because he's a philosopher.
Well, he's not famous. I know of him. He's done some great work. If you watch his videos against Kent Hovind, it's just amazing. Go look up Massimo Pigliucci versus Kent Hovind, and it is a masterclass. I say that very rarely. It's a masterclass of somebody who understands the topic, speaking to a young earth creationist. But Massimo Pigliucci is one particular philosopher, right? He disagrees with Sam Harris. He disagrees with other people. So what?
Who has a background, he has a PhD in biology and he has a PhD in philosophy. And he's an atheist, right? But he says,
Yeah, I want to highlight this, right? This is the case, right? If you listen enough to Sabur, he will name drop, he will cherry pick and quote mine certain philosophers. Now, if I bring up for you the full papers, the disagreement within philosophy is extraordinarily high. Philosophers disagree on virtually every topic you can. And so the implication here is that because Massimo Pigliucci, who's according to Sabur, a well-known atheist, a well-known atheist philosopher. He's well-known on YouTube. I don't know how big he is. And again, how do you establish somebody is like a high-level philosopher? Usually via their citations and so forth, and within their field, other philosophers will point to them. Now, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but that's one person's view. Somebody else you'll get to come along who will disagree with that. So all you're doing here is cherry-picking one guy that you think critiques Dawkins, for example. Dawkins is the hobby horse here. Just remember that. He thinks Dawkins is like our version of Muhammad. And of course, nothing can be further from the truth.
Dawkins' argument is based on a fallacy of equivocating two different meanings and meaning them to mean one particular meaning. So his entire argument, his entire book, you can summarize as the fallacy of equivocation. Yeah, he's confusing two different types. Now we can get into the details of this, but I want you to give that general overview to show there's a massive difference between the popular narrative and what the...
Okay, just for once, yet name one thing, Abdul, that he destroyed man. One thing that has turned out to be the case, that is true, that either I disagreed with or didn't know, and in fact is the case. Name me one thing, because you guys all parrot the same thing. And when I ask you, name me something that he, quote, destroyed me on, I'll wait. Go ahead, give it your best shot.
Academics are saying, which is why Richard Dawkins, why can't he get his book published as a philosophical paper?
Because it's not aimed as a philosophical paper, it's aimed for the lay person. That's why. It's to use your term, it's a category mistake. Dawkins is not attempting to publish the God Delusion as a philosophical or academic paper. It is a paper book aimed at lay people. That's why. So don't confuse the categories, Sabur.
You'll not find a single philosophical journal which is willing to take the central argument of the God Delusion and publish it and get it peer reviewed. It'll get slaughtered, which is why some philosophers have said Richard Dawkins will not pass an introductory philosophy of science and religion class. He will not.
Okay, we'll let him, finish the bashing of Richard Dawkins as if this is central in any way to atheism. Some atheists are convinced by some of his arguments, like myself. Some atheists are not, and I'm not convinced of all of his arguments. Depends what the argument is. And I will just look at it dispassionately. He's an atheist, and if I agree with it because he's given good reasons, I'll accept it. If it's a bad argument and it can be demonstrated to be a bad argument, I'll disagree with it. It's not a problem. He's not my prophet. So, let's let him finish the bashing of Dawkins here because it's his hobby horse.
Not pass the introduction because his very works are based on these types of fallacies.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, your segment, Doctor, we'll talk about suffering, because this is another thing that
Okay, this is going to be interesting. This is one of my sort of favorite ones. So let's listen into Imran now, and I'm definitely going to comment here. I think there's quite a few things to be said here.
Stephen Fry. I always call it the Stephen Fry argument because he's the one who says, like, when he sees God, he's going to say, "How very dare you? How very dare you?" And then he's going to talk about kids get cancer and poor and poverty and famine and war and all of this kind of stuff. And so,
yeah, I'm still waiting, Abdul, for you to say something that Sabur destroyed me on and that turned out to be true. I'll wait for you. Don't worry. I've asked this of virtually every single sheepish Muslim that claims that Sabur destroyed me. Name me something that he, quote, said that turned out to be true that I either didn't know or disagreed with. I'll wait for you.
The claim that the atheists, I don't even know how they make this claim too much, because to me, it's just refuted straight away. It's, because bad things happen, maybe you could philosophize that God wants bad things to happen. So just because bad things happen doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It just...
Okay, let's just pause it here. Hamza doesn't understand the argument. The argument is as follows. If your God is omnibenevolent, i.e. that he is all good, then we would not expect to see unnecessary suffering or evil in the world. We see unnecessary suffering and evil in the world. Therefore, your all-good God does not exist. That's basically the argument. That's kind of the logical version, and there's an evidential version which is similar. It just points to the evidence in the world. I prefer the evidential argument to the logical one. Hey, and Stops is back with us. Hey, Stops, welcome back, sir.
Hi, they called something else, so I aborted, could go home. You carry on, you're in the groove. I'll just watch the chat.
No, please, you carry on as well. We've just got through Subwer's thing, so you would have been pulling your hair out probably a little bit. He did ride the hobby horse of Dawkins. That's his thing, as if that's our prophet. And I've made clear that whether, if Dawkins is correct and he's got good reasons, we'll believe it. If not, we won't believe it. So his view is the central argument of the God delusion wouldn't pass peer review, and that's not the point, right? The point was for it to be a paperback. And if in fact the central argument is incorrect, then we can say the argument is incorrect. You need to present it and his reasons for and against it. But again, even if that was the case, we can say that's a bad argument. That's not a problem. No atheist is going to have a sleepless night of whether Dawkins' central argument in the God delusion is problematic or is false. We'll accept it if there's good reasons. He's not our prophet.
Yeah, and did you point out that all that evolution does?
There we go.
Is
I'm speaking to the wall, right? But never mind. Yeah. But this is the level that some people are. I don't think that all Muslims are like that. We get a few of these that are not particularly paying attention or able to comprehend. But again, I'm not making the view that all Muslims, don't have a level of knowledge or don't have a high IQ. I do, however, make the claim that every Muslim lacks some level of critical thinking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't intelligent or academic or whatever the case is.
Have you pointed this out?
Suffering can bring greater good, so saying of God is all good and it isn't necessarily true. Okay,
we're talking about unnecessary suffering. We're talking about animal suffering. We're talking about different things. We're not generally saying that every form and every kind of suffering can't be a better good. Of course, a vaccination of a child can cause pain or the drilling of a tooth, but it is for the greater good, and that is not what we're talking about. Anyway. I don't know why we're even addressing these stupid things. The problem is with evolution, the point why anybody would bring up evolution is because there is a claim in the Quran, in the Bible, in Torah, that a God created a pair of humans. Correct. And all mankind somehow is based on this one man and this woman. And Correct. That is what evolution shows us is bullshit, is not Correct. True, that is all. There's nothing else. You
weren't even here, and you've kind of basically almost, not quite word for word, but you've basically said almost exactly the same thing I said. And that's the point. Okay. Every time they bring up creator, we're going to say, no, it falsifies a particular theist creator that postulates that humans or indeed other animals were puffed into existence via God's incredible power, as opposed to they came from a common ancestor of some sort. That's what it falsifies. So it's a straw man to suggest that it falsifies a undefined or vague creator. That's not the claim. And that's not Dawkins's claim either.
And we are not making a claim. Again, it's a reaction to a claim.
Right.
This means God allows it to exist. And then you can, to happen. And then you can ask the question, why does God allow it to happen? But anyway, let's take it from its nuts and bolts. And you're going to struggle to do this, I think, without Islam. That's the only problem.
Okay, we'll do it. Whatever you need to do. You can't, your guys' view is based on Islam. You can't really take Islam out of your view. And when you go to creator, you're still thinking in your mind about Islam. So you can't get away from Islam. Islam is your foundation. So I don't know why you're trying so hard to get away from it. It's almost like you don't want to put Islam, quote unquote, up for critique in some way.
Because
I'll try and do it without.
I was just saying that because James SC is banging on about Islam in the comments, right? And we ain't talking about Islam.
We're happy to invite anyone on afterwards when we put a link out to discuss. But I wanted to touch on Brother Sabur's what he mentioned. It's something very profound, and that's a lot of this was profound actually. But there's something that stuck out to me was this idea that atheism is somehow linked with science, and there isn't actually a link there. The leap of faith that is required to jump between science and atheism is a huge chasm.
Okay. I don't know anybody that suggests that atheism is, quote, linked to science. What certainly myself, I won't speak for every atheist, says is that science is certainly a bedrock of us understanding the world around us. And we appeal to science as a foundational mechanism to assist us to understand the world and to find out what is going on, the ontological claims of the world. That's what we're saying. I'm not somebody that says science is the only way to, quote, find out information or investigate the world, but it's certainly one of, if not the best way of doing that, because it has self-correcting mechanisms built in there. And again, this word faith, if I was speaking to Imam, I'd immediately call him on this. This word faith, what do you mean by that? Atheists don't use the word faith. And I certainly don't. Again, I won't speak for all atheists. I don't use the word faith because it's a lower bar even than belief. You only ever hear theists use it, and you only ever hear them say it when they don't have any good reasons or evidence, and you've explored whatever their belief is and their justification, and you've shown that it doesn't have good reasons. Then they will say, "Oh, well, I believe it on faith," which is like a retreat to the back door and say, well, I'm going to believe it in spite of not having good reasons and evidence. That's what faith is normally used by theists as. Other people try and redefine faith. But if you don't have faith, then you're going to say, hey, I believe this, and here's my reasons. Faith is only ever brought up as a back door to escape with. And I think that's disingenuous, and that's not what atheists do, or at least certainly not what I do.
And it can't be jumped. You can be a world record long jumper, and you're not going to make that jump because it's not possible to do that. Which is why sometimes you think that when scientists publish popular,
I just got to stop for a second. Stops. All these sort of things, we could do shows on this sort of thing. I don't know what a soul is. I mean, I think that term, it's not incoherent, but it borders on unintelligible. And here's something else not all of Genesis has to be taken literally. Yeah, okay, that's a Christian claim. We can deal with that later. What's your criteria? Some other theological guy making the argument. I mean, God could have been much clearer about this. I don't accept that you can pick and choose. I know you need to do that in the Bible, and the Muslims are seemingly coming to the point where they have to do that, and they can't.
You're muted again.
Your problem is you don't have a criteria that you can show for good reason. So you can do the literal, figurative, and metaphoric and analogous, but I'm going to be very skeptical of that. This is man trying to make sense of a book that isn't as clear as it could have been.
Writings that aren't philosophical, like in journals, for example, philosophically recognized.
Just shout if you want to stop, because I heard you breathe. So if you need to stop.
Yeah, because I'm just realizing, when they're inside their little echo chamber here, look how pleased Hamza looks with himself. And later on, he's like, ooh, Hans, then that's totally different.
Yeah, I guess you're always going to be more comfortable around people that already believe what you believe. I mean, maybe it's the same for us as well. Who knows?
They're almost writing out of their lane. They're sort of going out of their lane and delving into things, and almost hoping that because the average person on the street doesn't know the differences between these technical things, that they can get away with this idea.
Okay, so the first thing I'd ask Imran is, what are you talking about? What things? Which people? I mean, you're making, and this is the thing that happens with this. They make these general statements, and then you have to critique them to get underneath the general statements to see if there's remotely any substance. And then they might cherry pick or go for low-hanging fruit, and you go, okay, but I could do the same, right? I could pick out, let's say, this particular guy here, this Abdul guy, and I've asked him already, what was it specifically that Sabur destroyed me on that turned out to be true? And I'm still waiting for it. But again, you'll get low-hanging fruit like that who will just repeat themselves, who couldn't differentiate a good argument from a bad one if you gave them a manual. But I'm not going to take them as representative of all Muslims. And so how do you go from a general to a specific statement? What is your argument for this? Let's see if he actually lays one out.
And Brother Sabur uses a term, and he used it in Speaker's Corner a few times, and I hope he'll elaborate. I'm sure it will come up later. The most atheists that we meet, and most of them atheists in the chats, and even some of the scientists who are working at high levels are what we would call socialized atheists. They've been brought up into this concept because they follow something underlying, which is called scientism, and this is almost a religion in itself.
Okay, here's where it gets disingenuous. It's almost a religion. What is a religion? Believing in some sort of supernatural entity. Where exactly does science, even if there was this, quote, scientism that you allude to, that these people do, that you don't have evidence for, that it's your personal subjective belief about, where is that remotely like religion? If you want to say it's a dogmatic view and you can present an argument and you can present an example of somebody who does that, maybe that person has that dogmatic view, but to claim that it's almost like religion is bordering on disingenuous.
And the thing is,
And
as
I'm
soon as you ask him what scientism actually is, he will fail.
That's again a question. What do you mean by scientism? Yeah.
sure the brother Sabul can expand on this. So that's very profound. So there is no intrinsic link between following or adhering to science and being an atheist. So this is actually a fallacious position, that because a lot of atheists will come to us with this perspective that I'm a science-based
First thing they
person,
say.
evidence-based
First
person.
thing they say.
First thing they say, and actually, there's actually no link there.
And
And I think that
even at that point,
Okay. So again, nobody's saying that it necessarily has to be, but an atheist goes, how am I going to find out about the world? You guys, the theists in this case, you claim that God has told you all about the world. We don't have access to that, so we're going to use some other method or methods to find out about the world. And one of the most reliable is science. So we do hang our hat on science in the sense that that's what we will use as evidence for whatever beliefs we can, where science is applicable. And you're saying that no, either we shouldn't do that, or we are there is no good reason to link the two. And I've just shown you why there is a good reason to link it, because that's the method we choose. You guys choose the Quran, or you want to try and split the difference and claim that the Quran and science are not in conflict, which I vehemently disagree with. But science is one of the yardsticks we use, or at least most of the atheists I'm aware of. There might be atheists that don't. And again, you have to ask every atheist, what do they believe? What's their mechanism for understanding the world around them?
you have science v Islam, and you're like, what are you talking about?
completely. But I'm going to try and have a slightly different approach to this problem of evil and suffering.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with the very, very basic thing.
Okay, before he does, because obviously we have got some Muslims in here, so let me put the banner on here. If you want to talk to us directly, I mean, you could have come on here and done it, but if you're a bit nervous about coming on here, and I understand that can be the case, then there's the Discord link. You can join the Gin and Tonic Discord link, and that's where we can hang out sometimes, and especially if on a Friday night, we can hang out there, and you can come and speak to us there. I mean, if you want to come in here and have a conversation and you want to specifically talk about or defend or talk about this particular stream, then I will have you on here to defend anything that you think these guys are correct about, that we disagree with, and we can have that conversation. Otherwise, the link I've posted here that's in the chat now, if you go there and jump into that, you can come in and have a conversation offline if you don't want to do it online.
The label itself. How are we labeling things evil? And I want you to keep in mind the atheistic concept of the universe and a theistic concept of the universe, because we're going to try and apply that label.
Sorry, this is what I said earlier, and I can't understand how this Imran guy can come up with the same thing, where everybody should know that the atheistic concept does not exist. The atheist just does not believe what the theist believes. And that is not a concept. It is not about the concept of the universe or the cosmogony, the beginning of the universe or the evolution of the universe. This is not part of the concept of an atheist. It depends what other education he or she might have. It is not the basic belief or the basic part of anything regarding atheists.
And here's the thing, Abdul, as well, just on the point that I've got on there. The Quran is better than science because science can change and the Quran doesn't. Well, that would only be the case, Abdul, if you could show that the Quran was the most spectacularly accurate book that better represented reality than anything else in the world. And you are welcome to attempt that. Until that
Also,
time,
the other thing is,
science is self-correcting, and it's in conflict with the Quran in many cases.
Yeah, there's two mistakes here. Science doesn't change. Science is a nebulous term. Science is just a method. It's like saying a hammer doesn't change. A hammer changes. No, a hammer doesn't change. The same way as science doesn't change. The second thing is the Quran does change. So it's very, very stupid of anyone in this day and age, since we know from June 2020 onwards that the Quran does indeed change. It is unreliable because it claims it doesn't change, but we have evidence now that it does change. So this argument is out. You cannot say that anymore, so that both these things are wrong.
Just one more for the hell of it. This Aussie guy, well, he's actually originally South African, but hey, it's an easy mistake to make, got roasted by Sabur. So, Clarissa, can you name one thing that Sabur roasted me on that turned out to be true? Let me ask you the question again slowly in case you don't understand. Can you name me something that Sabur, quote, roasted me on that turned out to be true? I'll wait. And that's the question I'll just ask any one of these
Yeah,
guys.
but listen to this. Proof Quran change, I will leave Islam today.
Really? We could do another stream on that. We could do a stream on just on that to help you leave.
But do you know how dangerous that comment is after what I have just said? We have positive evidence that it has changed. And I'm not talking about what Yasser Qadhi has said. He just pointed out that there are holes. He just pointed out that they don't have answers. I'm talking about positive evidence that shows, and you cannot argue this anymore, that shows that there are hundreds of different versions of a Quran. So you can't say any of this because you're never going to leave Islam. Because it doesn't matter what I show you, you will not leave Islam. So to make a statement like that, number one, shows you're ignorant of the current information level on the preserved whatever status of the Quran. And it shows that you are disingenuous. It shows that you are not honest because you will not leave Islam. So this is, I don't know why people do that.
Okay, let's continue on.
In both of these universes to see how that would happen. So let me start with and if your interaction here would be great, guys. So let's have an experiment. This is a thought experiment. Okay, I'm going to start with a person with a chainsaw attacks a child and chops them in half. Is this evil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. A person is on a step ladder with a chainsaw, falls off the step ladder and chops a child in half. Is this evil?
Yeah.
It's evil.
Say again.
No, he misunderstood it. We're not going to roast Sabur on this one. He probably misunderstood. I'm being charitable. I could roast him on that because obviously that's not the case. But again, he probably misheard. So I'm not going to. I'll be charitable and say he misheard it because Hamza asks him to repeat it.
A person on a step ladder falls. So this is an accident. He falls.
Yeah.
With the chainsaw. Sorry, I didn't say accident before, but I'm clarifying. He falls with a chainsaw, and the chainsaw cuts the child in half.
Oh, it's an accident. Okay, yeah. You say it's an accident. You wouldn't say there's no intention.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say no.
Okay, but even do you have to say that it's an accident? If he falls off, what's the chance that he can chop somebody in half? I mean, the immediate thought is that's an accident. Nobody falls off a ladder intentionally to chop a child in half. You risk cutting yourself in half and injuring yourself. So, I mean, do you need to say the word accident? I don't think so.
Great. So that you mentioned the word intention there. Now let's take it another step. A robot, following its programming, takes a chainsaw and chops a child in half. Is that robot intrinsically evil? No. Okay. So all of the actions are the same. The outcome is the same. We have a dead child in all three scenarios. One of them we would say is evil, and the other two we say are not evil. And what was the difference? Brother Sabur mentioned it.
Intention.
And intention implies a mind behind the action. That's quite clear.
Yes, as he can talk
so if there is no mind
yeah, this is like a very slow build-up, right? He obviously wants to get to the point that only minds, entities or whatever with minds can have intention. Okay, but that's a trivial point. But let's let him finish a bit. Otherwise, I'm going to jump ahead. Yeah.
behind the action, then that thing itself cannot be labeled with the term evil, because that's really just a judgment for the outcome. And so we go back to what was the mind behind the outcome before we decide if this is evil or not. So now take that example and apply it to the universe that, say for an example, that atheists believe in, that there is no creator. Can we apply to anything that happens within this universe where there is no creator? Everything is mechanistic, like the robot is mechanistic. Can we apply the label to evil to any action that happens?
No, the answer is an obvious yes. And philosophers have been
course,
doing
yes.
that for thousands of years. You don't need to be, I mean, this is mind-boggling here. You don't
Exactly.
need to be a theist to label something evil. You can disagree with why I label it evil, which obviously there's a lot of debate around ethics, etc., and morality. But to suggest that because it's an atheistic universe, you can't label something evil, by what standard? Okay, so now we ask the question, by what standard? If you're going to accept my standard, of course I can. If you're going to do an external critique and reject my standard, well, then you can say, no, you can't. But why should I accept your external critique? Because you're
But the
going
thing is, he is somebody who's doing something in the medical field. I don't know what, but he
he's
must
a doctor,
have.
I think, like a medical MD, I think.
Well, I hope he's not a human doctor. I hope he's a vet or something. But the thing is that he must have some sort of training. So he must be able to think along some lines. But what he is doing at the moment shows that he has abandoned his brain. He's left it outside and he is now like talking as though there is hardly any, this is like Hamza's level. I don't understand what he is doing, how anybody who has got any kind of training can say things like that. It's to me, it's mind-boggling. There's something wrong with the education system in the UK if I listen to people like that.
Earthquakes, floods, cancers. We can't.
Nobody's claiming you can. Is there any atheist on the planet who's claiming that you can label a flood or anything else evil? You could label that evil, however, if you have a God that has control over that. But if you have a non-God universe, no. And there's nobody that's claiming it is. So again, pointing that out is a trivial point. You're not making anything substantive against an atheist. I'm going to agree that an earthquake or a flood is not evil. And I'm going to ask you, what's your point?
Why can't we apply that label in that atheistic universe?
It's devoid of volition.
Devoid of volition, devoid of mind, devoid of intention.
Yeah.
So when the atheist even raises the point that why is there evil and suffering in the world, this is an admission at a fundamental level that he believes there is intention, volition, and mind to explain the universe.
No, it's about the claim.
Yeah, agreed. This is it's a serious error in thinking. It doesn't. Okay, so let's just get clear here. The universe itself doesn't need a mind behind it to call something evil. All we need is some standard. I use well-being based on humans. And now, if it were the case that all humans were something like Wolverine or Colossus, in which case they could not be in any way injured or harmed, that their well-being could not be affected, then for me the term morality would have no meaning. It's a fact of the universe, if you like, our biology, that we can suffer physical, psychological, emotional pain, and based on that I can then say, okay, more of that unnecessarily is worse, less of that is good. Now you can challenge that as my starting point. I'm fine with you challenging that, but there's nothing that prevents me from doing that. And it's an equivocation to say that, hey, you can't do it, that the universe needs a mind behind it to call something evil. No, it doesn't.
Or behind the universe. It's implicit within the question itself.
No, I think we've just shown it's not implicit at
Yeah.
all. And by the way, there's another quick thing here. There's a difference. I don't know how many people know this. Obviously, like Stops and I and many people have. There's a difference between an internal critique and an external critique. So oftentimes Stops and I will do an internal critique of Islam. We'll go, okay, assuming that Islam is the case or that the presuppositions that you come to the table with are true, let's see whether it's coherent and moral. If this God exists and the claims about this God are true, how does that manifest in the world? Does it contradict what he says or what he claims to do in the world? And if there is, that is a problem. An external critique is, okay, I'm going to use my worldview and look at yours. That's less powerful because the other person can say, well, why should I accept your external view? And then you'd have to give them reasons or invite them to accept your epistemology or your starting point. An internal critique is much more powerful if you can get that to work. And I think we will before the end of this video. You wanted to say something, Sobs?
No, I don't, because this Clarissa guy or girl or whatever this is horrific. This is exactly the kind of Muslim we don't need on this planet. This is exactly what we are on about. This is exactly what we're always pointing out. These are the kind of Muslims we don't need.
Yeah, they have no grounds to say animal or anything is wrong. Of course they do, Clarissa. You're just completely ignorant of the fact that atheists have got moral virtues. Any sophisticated theist will say, yes, atheists can say there's good atheists, there's bad atheists, and they have got reasons. We'll challenge their foundation. That's a legitimate claim. But to say you have no grounds is just completely ignorant statement.
Go to Speaker's Corner. What the hell should we do in Speaker's Corner? Why are so many people so fixed on Speaker's Corner? I can demolish these people right here from behind my desk. You don't need much of a brain to do that. I don't need to Speaker's Corner to tell them they are wrong. I can do that from here. So why should I go and sit in a plane for I don't know how many hours, then go find a cab, go from the airport all the way to the hotel, spend a night in the hotel, the next morning go to Speaker's Corner, tell them you are wrong, you are silly, this is a non sequitur, get back in the cab, get back to the airport, get back to the plane, fly all the way back, just to tell them that I can do that from here. We live in the 21st century. We are no longer in the 7th century where we need to travel somewhere to go and talk to someone. We can do it from here.
Yeah, I used to go to Speaker's Corner. I know I live over 200 miles away, so I don't get down there anymore. It takes, or when I did try to go there, it took me about 5 hours to get, no, less, about 4 hours to get there and 4 hours to get back. So 8 hours in total, and I could only spend about 5 hours in Speaker's Corner, and it cost me £120. Unfortunately, I can't do that anymore. When I used to live in London, I used to go regularly. There's lots of videos on my channel, not anymore, obviously. So now I have to do it online, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
And the other thing is this, again, to this, Clarissa, if you feel that we are going to get roasted again, I don't know where the again comes from, so why don't you do it? Why don't you come on here and roast us? You have my permission to roast us, like intensely. Go and let the roasting begin. Come on here and roast us. But you're too much of a coward. You rely on others to do it. You hide behind your mummy, and then you go tell Sabur to go and hit them. You can't do it yourself. You don't have the arguments. You're not strong enough. You don't have the intellectual capacity or capability to do anything. And then you go and you just shoot arrows from behind your mummy's skirts.
All right, stops. Let's go on. You're getting triggered a little bit with the with this. Again, not all Muslims are, like this. So let's make clear that a couple of imbeciles in the chat, they are not representative of all Muslims. But if one of you wants to come on here and debate this topic or challenge any of the topics that have been talked about in this particular stream, I will post the link and you can come in. We're waiting.
You can't even ask the question about evil in the world unless you make this assumption. If you say that, if you believe that there is no God, then everything then no longer is evil.
That is
Total
not even
bullshit.
wrong. It's the term. I love the term. It's not even wrong. That is so profoundly mistaken. It's baffling. I'm not sure where he's getting this from. His idea that, hey, if you don't have intent, that because humans have intention, the universe must have intention in order for you to label anything evil is a complete and utter non sequitur. One does not follow from the other unless you hold the belief that God is the only thing, in which case it's an external critique, and I'm going to say, sorry, buddy, I don't accept your premise to begin with.
But the thing is, there's something like in this brand. This is a guy, I made a video about him. He actually argued that the sex slavery is okay. He actually argued that chapter 4, number 24, is actually not so bad. He really argued this. And I made a video about this where I said, I cannot believe that a human being in the 21st century actually goes and argues the point for sex slaves, even when they are married, that you are allowed to have sex with them according to the Quran. That for me is the height of immorality, and he is arguing for it.
Okay.
It's just an action, like a ball rolling down a hill, like a robot carrying out mechanistic things, like a guy falling off a ladder. And these are mechanistic things. They don't carry any moral weight, moral value. So almost immediately what we've done here is we've taken this word evil away from the atheistic worldview. So if you want to apply it, you have to assume God to start with.
I think we've explained why that's not the case. I think we're just going to move on. I mean, we've said
I just want to make one more point.
So,
I hear this a lot, and this is something that the Muslims need to stop. There is no such thing as an atheistic worldview. I don't get up in the morning and say, which leg am I going to take out of bed first, thinking about my not God existing? It doesn't work. It doesn't matter which hand I use. It doesn't matter in what order I do things, because my not believing God exists is not going to influence anything. Whereas you, as the Muslim, you need to do that. Your worldview, all your actions, every single thing is governed by the insistence that there is a God. I don't have that, so there is no such thing as an atheistic worldview. People might have a worldview, but it is definitely not only built on not believing gods exist.
So now let's apply it to. So now the explanation. Let's go into the theistic universe. We believe that there is an intention, a volition, a mind behind the universe, and so what that means really is that we need to explain why this suffering might be here. Why
Okay, what you need to explain is why an all good or omnibenevolent God would allow unnecessary suffering. That's what you've got to explain. So please be sure that you are critiquing, at least mine, or I think other atheists, actual critique, and not a straw man of that makes it easier for you to critique. So let me say it again. You need to critique, or you need to answer why an all good or omnibenevolent God would allow unnecessary suffering. And you need to give good reasons. And if you appeal to his nature, it's a circular argument, and that is invalid. So we'll wait to hear whether he can in fact do this. And in fact, whether he will actually put forward an argument against the argument that we're coming with, not his understanding or his potentially mistaken understanding of the claim against the argument of from evil.
That's a long wait.
These evil things that might be happening, why are they there? So that's another tangent now we have to go on. So in an atheistic universe, you can't even make the moral judgment because there's nothing to anchor that with. In a theistic universe now, we have to anchor this somehow and explain why this might be there. So let's go to another thought experiment.
I'm always very hesitant and skeptical of thought experiments and analogies with Muslims. In my experience, 99.9% of the time, they are disanalogous or irrelevant or don't actually appeal to the point. And normally you bring this up if somebody doesn't understand something. Then you go, okay, let me make an analogy to help somebody understand. Well, at this point, we don't need that. And it's kind of like laboring the point.
So initially what we've done is to claim evil exists is to acknowledge the universe is intended and there is a mind of volition behind it.
Okay, well, that's obviously demonstrably false. That's only coming from your paradigm, which we don't accept, and you'd have to give good reasons as to why that must be the case. And you haven't done so far. You've just made the assertion that atheists can't talk about evil because if the universe doesn't have a mind behind it, then the term evil is meaningless. That is complete nonsense. If you look at any philosophical paper from anybody, and most philosophers are atheists, and a lot of them talk about ethics, that's not the case. In fact, just for argument's sake, I will tell you now, just for interest's sake, just to show how mistaken this is. I've actually got it here. Where is the option? I've got it here somewhere about moral realism. So meta-ethics, moral realism or anti-realism. So moral realism, there are actually real facts in the world that are right and wrong. 52% of philosophers accept that. And those that believe in anti-realism, i.e. that isn't a fact, 30%. Okay, so over 50% of people believe, and most of these are non-believers who believe that there are moral facts in the world, and based on that, you can say something is right or wrong.
A theistic universe, the way that the problem of evil is often put is, look, God is all good, doesn't really want evil around. God is all powerful, so should have the ability to get rid of evil and must want to stop evil. So why is there evil? Either he doesn't want to get rid of it and he's not good, or he can't get rid of it and he's not all powerful.
Yeah, that's the classic logical problem of evil. That's one way you can go. I think the evidential problem of evil is much stronger than that. I wouldn't present the logical problem of evil. They're similar, but not exactly the same.
And because evil exists, therefore God must not exist, because those are two things that the qualities that God should have, two attributes that God should have.
Yeah, that it's in conflict, right? As I said, if an all good God exists and he permits evil and he either can't stop it or won't stop it, then he isn't all good, therefore God does not exist. That's the essential. But it all goes around his goodness, his ultimate all goodness.
But let's do a thought experiment around this. This argument itself has a major flaw in it, and I'm sure that lots of people already know the flaw within the argument. And what it does, the first flaw is actually this. What we're doing is we're taking almost a truncated view of what people understand God to be. So God is not just those things, all good and all powerful, but he's all wise and he's all just. And there are lots of attributes of God that are deliberately sidelined within this.
Yes, for good reason, because the only one we're concentrating on is omnibenevolence. The rest of the things aren't relevant. So why are you going to bring them up?
The second thing is there is an assumption made within that this universe should ideally be a place where there is no evil, and there's no foundation for why do you think this universe should be in a utopia for us?
Okay,
nobody's making that claim. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. This is not the argument. The argument is if there is an all-good God, then unnecessary suffering should not exist. Unnecessary suffering does exist, therefore an all good God does not exist. Nobody's claiming that suffering, although you, and we'll get to it. I'm going to keep a bombshell in a moment. Let's let him get through it, because there's something that Phil brought up that I actually hadn't thought about, but I'm gonna drop that bomb shortly.
There's no, and this is just an assumption given without that basis. So let's do a thought experiment very quickly. Two different thought experiments.
Not another one.
That are very
takes
similar,
ages to tell.
based upon a possible world where there may be no evil or no good. So, or sorry, no evil or only good. So let's have a look at a universe where you can't do bad things, you can't do evil things. You want to if you want to have a knife and you want to stab someone, it turns into a butterfly. If you think of an evil thought, pink smoke starts coming out of your ears and the thought turns into a good thought. If you jump off a cliff, you start to float. Nothing evil can happen in this world. It's a purely good world. So the question then is there anything in that universe, this conception that we've had of this world, that we can say is good or that we can say is evil?
Well, you just said it's an all good world. So if it is an all good world, then everything in there is good. Obviously, by definition, there's going to be nothing in there that's evil.
The point he's trying to make is you need to appreciate it, so that you need evil to show that it is good. This is a child. This is the brain of a child who thinks, well, if it's only dark, then it needs light so that you can appreciate the dark. No, that is not the case. I don't need to have ugly to appreciate beauty.
Okay, here's the bomb. Let me drop the bomb now. All we have to ask him, Ram, and Skydive Phil did this. Is heaven a place where only good exists? The answer is, of course, yes. Do people have free will in heaven? Yes, they do. There is an absence of evil there. Does that mean that people do not know what is good? The answer is, of course, no. They know what is good, and there's only good in heaven. So, in fact, there is a scenario in which God has done this. No evil is present. People still have free will, and they can either know or be given the information a priori from God directly what is good. So, by that logic, evil is unnecessary.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Well,
Can we do any action in that universe good or evil?
I would say not only can you not say it, it'd be meaningless to even talk about it.
Absolutely.
Well, no, it wouldn't be meaningless. You've defined it as all good. And yeah, I know what you're saying, Stop. In order for somebody to recognize it, if they had no a priori knowledge of good and evil, if you just sent a baby in there and everything happened, then from that point of view, you wouldn't say, hey, everything's all good or all bad. Although you could still have degrees of goodness and badness. You could still imagine something that might be better. In other words, a human that lives forever or doesn't require food or whatever. That would be, quote, better than a human that requires food or dies or has disease. Let's say none of that happened. If you imagine the perfect world, then yes, by definition, you would just have these things that are all good. But then you'd have heaven, essentially.
It wouldn't make any sense.
And why not? You're absolutely right. Why not?
But it's kind of like talking about 4 dimensions within this 3 dimension. It's just a concept which does not exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what happens so let's give the counter example and I'll give the underlying reason why. So say if, for example, there is a universe in which everything that happens is bad and evil. If you try and give someone a kiss, you end up spitting acid at them and they melt. If you think a good thought, it turns into daggers and flies across and kills the person you're thinking about. If you eat some food, it becomes poison.
That's not the worst possible world. All you need is Sam Harris's view that every conscious creature that is capable of suffering suffers for as long as humanly possible, or not humanly, for as long as possible in the worst possible way. That's all you need to say. You don't need to go into this long explanation. That would be the worst possible world, or the most
hell?
Evil world. Exactly, right? Or something like hell.
Everything that is bad happens. And in the universe, is there anything that could be called good or could be called bad?
No.
No, you moron! You've just defined it. Come on.
Yeah.
The main reason for all of this in both of those worlds is you remove same thing, the free will, the volition.
You don't. At no point do you remove free will. That's a non sequitur. in no way does it follow that if everything was all good, somebody wouldn't have free. I mean, and again, all we have to point to is heaven. Heaven is a place where there is no evil, there is free will, and only good things happen. Unless you want to deny free will in heaven, they're never going to go down that route. So this just doesn't follow one from the other. And Skydive, I think, said it to him. If not to him, then one other person. But I'm sure it was him, or it would have been one of the other apologists. It's mind-boggling that they don't see that there's no connection there. I'm stepping away for a sec. Stops. Can you just chat for a moment?
I just wanted to say, answer. Just please go away. You're gonna pull out your hair. You're gonna go crazy. You're gonna stomp your feet. You're gonna lie on the floor and go crazy, because this is really, I mean, it's mind-boggling. What I hear now, we've got three people with three different levels of training or education, where Imran apparently is. I mean, somebody told me he's a doctor or something, and he is bringing up the most childish arguments. Like, this is absolutely crazy. I've never heard anything so simplistic being brought up by somebody who's had tertiary education, well, or claims to have had, I don't know, and then comes across like a I don't know, like a toddler. It's unbelievable. I can't fathom this. I don't know why somebody is so unthinking. I mean, I can understand why somebody like him has a problem with morality and doesn't think that raping female slaves is bad. Okay, well, that's his level of morality. But the level of arguments, wow. And then we've got some people in the chat here, so you're going to have fun. Because we've got somebody who says that apartheid is bad. Okay, yes, I agree with that. Oh, you're back. Okay, so I don't need to go into what I'm reading in the chat, because this is so funny. I'm just saying to Hamza, he should leave, because he's going to go crazy here.
It's all good.
The agency of the individuals is removed. So agency really, in a summarized way, is your ability to choose between right and wrong and choose and do those actions. If you take those actions away, those abilities away, those worlds become amoral. There is no good in them, or there is no evil in them, depending on which of those two examples you take. So to have a world or a universe in which there is good, you require the contrast. You require evil. To have a world in which you can say something is evil, you need the contrast. You need the.
Well, obviously, we've shown that's not true, right? With heaven, you don't need that, and God can communicate to all humans everything that He claims is good, and you'd immediately get that a priori knowledge that it is good. You wouldn't require evil to show you what's good. So that doesn't follow. Oh, damn it. I clicked the wrong button there. Sorry.
By the way, so did you just read the latest comment? This is so funny. No. Somebody says that Rob, what was it? Sabua had Rob on his knees with his balls in his mouth. So somebody said, "Oh, are you saying that Sabua is gay?" Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of moronic comments. One has to size them. But again, we don't censor comments, unlike some Muslim apologists who censor, who time out. I got a timeout when I was on Hamza's thing. Stop spamming, got blocked on there. We don't block people. You can have your say here. Just don't spam.
Raises the point that why is there evil and suffering in the world? This is an admission at a fundamental level. That lots of people already know the flaw within the argument.
A bit further.
That we can say is good or that we can say is evil.
Yes, as he talks a lot.
What do you guys think of that? Can we do any action in that universe good or evil?
What is the point?
It could be called good or could be called bad. No. The underlying difference, the main reason for all of this in both of those worlds is you remove same thing, the free will, the volition.
Yeah, okay,
the agency of the individuals is removed. So agency really, in a summarized way, is your ability to choose between right and wrong and choose and do those actions. If you take those actions away, those abilities away, those worlds become amoral. There is no good in them, or there is no evil in them, depending on which of those two examples you take. So to have a world or a universe in which there is good, you require the contrast. You require evil. To have a world in which you can say something is evil, you need the contrast. You need the good. This is like if you have a chalk and you want to write. If you write on the chalk,
you've explained it 5 times now.
Is white, you're not going to see the writing.
Yeah, he's going.
You need the blackboard with the white chalk to see the writing. And so as we would say that a creator is the maximally perfect being who would create the perfect universe, and we
Okay, that's a claim that you need to justify. That the maximally perfect creator will create. What do you mean by perfect? What's your standard for perfect? In other words, if I could show you that there was something that was imperfect, either in the design of its creatures or in something within reality separate from humans, would you agree that the creator did not create the perfect universe and therefore the creator is either imperfect or does not exist? We'll see.
and we would have to, as Muslims, we would believe this would therefore be that universe. So the combination of good and evil that we see necessarily means that this is the best way for the universe to be.
What's your argument for that? That's your assertion. What's the argument that says this is the perfect way or the necessary way it has to be? And if you say that, by the way, just another point, you're in conflict with his omniscience. His omnipotence, because an all-powerful God would have free choice. Are you saying that this was all that he could possibly create? Then you are negating his all-powerfulness.
So I hope that that was a couple of thought experiments to do that. So what explanation do we get from this? So one explanation is free will requires the good and evil to coexist. We have.
Okay, so that's obviously that's demonstrably false under their own worldview. If heaven is devoid of evil and there is only good in heaven and you have free will, therefore your claim has been not just rebutted, but it's been refuted by your own views on heaven.
So we're talking about a greater good. That maybe maybe we don't have the faculties to.
Okay, but then you've undermined your entire argument. Then you're claiming you're believing it on faith. Now you don't have good reasons for it. You have just surrendered your good reasons. If you're claiming that it must be good and we don't have any idea, then on what basis are you claiming that it must be good? You have to say faith if you're going to be intellectually honest. In which case, I don't have good reasons and evidence because we refuted the other claim. So what have you got left?
Understand fully, because we are limited necessarily in our ability to understand, and our understanding of what was in God's mind is necessarily limited. Just like if I went to my professor and asked the question, I'm going to get to the limit of my understanding with the professor. Despite his explanations, I will not be able to understand what he's saying, and that's my limitation of knowledge, and it doesn't reflect on the professor.
Okay, hang on a moment. If this is supposed to be an analogy with God, it does reflect on God. He's the supposedly, to use your words, perfect creator. If he cannot help you understand that, either he didn't create you perfectly or he's unwilling to allow you to understand it. Either way, that is a problem for your creator. He is responsible.
The same way, my inability to understand whatever is happening in the world in terms of evil or suffering doesn't necessarily reflect on bad reasoning or anything from the creator.
Yes, it does. I've just shown why it does.
In fact, for me to assume that I know better is an arrogant position to take.
You don't have to assume you know better. You just have to assume that if God is all perfect and he wanted you to know, he has the ability to allow you to know, such that there would be nothing that you didn't know or nothing that you couldn't understand. That's the claim.
And that's probably some of the things that we find people become self-deluding. Intrinsically, they become egotistical and they start to delude themselves about knowing the best thing that God should have done or could have done. So one thing is the free will. The second thing is that, and that explains a lot of the human level interactions. So the other thing that people often bring is, okay, what about animals? Animals suffer.
Okay, this one is huge. Skydive Phil's done a couple of debates on it. I think this is one of the strongest arguments against an omnibenevolent God. Let's listen to what his response is, and then I'll deal with it.
What about all of this? Why doesn't God intervene in those things that don't seem to make a difference? Why don't when there's an earthquake, just stop the earthquake. When there's a flood coming, just stop the flood. When there's a fire in the forest, just stop the fire. There's a couple of things wrong with this concept, and I'm just going to, rather than expand.
Okay, what did he just say now? He talked about animals, and then he went to naturalistic, what do you call it? Phenomenon or earthquakes or whatever the case is. If you're going to talk about animals, then talk about the unnecessary suffering of animals. Why are you now going to something that's an earthquake? That's got nothing to do with an animal. That will wipe out humans and animals. We can still ask the question, why would you allow animals that don't have the ability to know right and wrong to be wiped out? Which you can try and answer. But why are you going there now?
I'm just going to lay them out very briefly, and then I'd like to get some interactions from people. I think that people are asking for this in the chat. So the first thing is that as the universe, God's created the universe with some consistency, uniformity, and we use this.
No,
we assume.
Rob, sorry. Because Dave's making a good point at the moment. What is the point of creating an earthquake? Is it just so that the rest of the world can appreciate that they're not being hit by an earthquake? Can't you get your point across without creating earthquakes? Now, an earthquake is not something that you can create a planet with. It is something that happens due to tectonic plates, due to the movement of the crust over the mantle and things like that. So these are all natural processes. So in other words, this is not something that happens because somebody is having, a piece of string and pulling the tectonic plates along. That is ridiculous to think along these lines. It does not work like that. And we are not talking about that. We're not talking about earthquakes or anything. We're talking about the claims in the Quran made according to which this is an all-merciful creator, and we show it is not the case. That is the only thing we're doing. What you are doing is you're just building up a giant strawman addressing something that nobody's claiming.
Yeah, and also you have to ask the Muslims, what do you believe? Do you believe that God set everything in motion and then it's just running in a cause and effect manner in which God is not interfering? In which case God wouldn't have an effect unless he creates a miracle? Or are you claiming, Mr. Muslim or Mrs. Muslim, that God is in fact underpinning or maneuvering every single molecule in the entire universe? If he's doing that, then he's in control. Okay, and if he isn't doing that, why would he allow an earthquake to wipe out, for example, the Boxing Day tsunami? There were Muslims and Christians, probably Hindus and atheists, all kinds. One of them presumably had the right religion or none. Why, if he existed, why would he allow that to happen? Now we're asking that question in the context of a God that isn't controlling every single molecule, that just got it started and is watching what's going on. If he does control it, then it's even worse. Why would he allow that? Why would he, in fact, not just allow it, but do that, right? Actively kill 200,000 innocent people. Whichever way you look at it, it's very difficult for them to answer this question. Even with earthquakes, we haven't even got to animals, which is much more difficult to respond to. And Skydive Phil did this with actual philosophers, and I was surprised how bad their arguments were, because all their arguments are what's called theodicies, and these are arguments against why evil exists with regards to humans, but none of those work with animals. It was a masterclass of showing how the animal argument, unnecessary suffering of animals, just steamrolls over the concept that God is all good, yet allow unnecessary suffering. It's superbly good. That's why I say it's one of my strongest views.
This uniformity when we do things like science. So when I'm in my work, and I would be what some people would call a methodological naturalist, I take the theories that are prevalent and understood and accepted today, and I apply them indirectly onto people I'm seeing and I'm treating. So that is based upon the idea that the universe is uniform. Now, imagine a world where anytime something bad were going to happen even to animals somewhere, God was intervening. If flood was going to happen, flood stopped. Earthquake's going to happen, earthquake stopped. Our analysis of the laws of nature would break down.
No, it wouldn't necessarily. We'd just say that that's an extraordinary event. That was a God-created event. If everything else ran in a, quote, to use your term, uniform way, and we had something that violated the laws of physics, and we could establish this, then we could say, okay, that's God doing that. I don't see the problem with that. All we would say now is, okay, there's this extraordinary or supernatural event. That's obviously God at work. Thank you, God, for not wiping out all those innocent animals. Or thank you, God, for not wiping out your innocent creation, especially the ones that worship you. I don't see a problem with this. And in fact, Sean Carroll has addressed this in his book, The Big Picture. I recommend this. This book you'll get more good information from than the Quran and every single thing that's ever come from the supposed Allah. This book is just extraordinarily good, and it talks about those sort of things.
Because they would not be uniform. They wouldn't follow a pattern that would allow us to analyze them. So we would end up in a almost chaotic world.
No, we wouldn't. I've just shown it. There's nothing chaotic about it. The odd miracle, or even multiple miracles, once we establish that it's violating the laws of physics and the rest of physics, unless you're claiming that everything violates and there is no laws of physics, in which case it would be a random world, and then you wouldn't even know what non-randomness is. So you've got to choose one of them. But your assertion doesn't make sense.
And that's one thing that comes straight away to mind, that we need that. I think the other thing is that even if we are unable to explain the suffering of animals, etc., we go back to that same point, that if God is ultimately knowledgeable and just and wise as well as good, then whichever universe we find ourselves in when we're undergoing this, and this is where the religion aspect comes into it, this test of life.
That's an unfalsifiable claim. And what you're doing is you're taking it on faith, which undermines your position that God is all good. Nobody else should accept that God is all good based on a faith-based position, which is what you're saying now. If you can't explain why animals, experience unnecessary suffering, yet you want to still assert that God is omnibenevolent, then you're doing it on faith. And don't expect that to be remotely, for anybody who's thinking critically, remotely persuasive. And it shouldn't even be persuasive to you.
Because we don't believe it's a utopia, then this is the best possible way for the world to be.
Yeah, you're just claiming that. What's the argument this is the best possible? By what standard? We can easily imagine a better world. By what standard? Where there's less suffering. Unless you think that all suffering is necessary and you're taking that on faith, because how else are you going to demonstrate that? This is why I said this segment, and when they start talking about it with T-Jump later on, all three of them, this is the worst part for them. I mean, the other parts are not particularly good. But once they got onto, morals and so forth, it was a massive uphill battle for all three of them.
So that's really, in a nutshell, I've tried to, rather than just make it a thing, we've tried to make it interactive to underline the point. So the basic
this
thing
was the nutshell? I'd hate to get the detailed explanation or expression.
Yeah, that would take an hour. And if you understand the topic, you can relay it quite quickly. Hopefully I've done that. I haven't labored the point. Once you've done this for a while, and all three of these guys apparently have been doing this for many years, you can hone this down in a very short space of time. Most people don't have, the attention span, or you don't need to labor the point so much.
Even use the label if you're an atheist.
Why? Okay, so here's a good point. Quickly, we'll just do this one. Why is suffering bad from an atheist point of view? Okay, so if you take the view that, like I do, that well-being is my standard, then any unnecessary suffering would be bad by that standard. What do I mean by unnecessary? Where there is no overriding positive benefit. So having an operation would not be unnecessary suffering. You require that to survive and thrive. And that's why I would say you can challenge my sort of underlying foundation of well-being, but I think everybody, as far as I can tell, actually uses well-being. They just don't label it that. And even by the God standard, what makes heaven different from hell? What? The God says so? No. There'll be something else. Rivers of wine. What is it about rivers of wine as opposed to, burning in fire? What's the difference? Well, one is you suffer, the other is you don't suffer, aka well-being. Same thing.
Theistic universe of evil. Just don't put the label in. If you're going to put the label in, you have to assume that there's a volition, a mind, an intention behind the universe that you're blaming, because you're putting the blame onto this thing.
Yes, if we do an internal critique of Islam and you claim that your God is omnibenevolent, and we go into your universe and we go, okay, if your God exists and he's omnibenevolent, what should we expect an omnibenevolent God to do in his universe? Well, for me, it depends. For me, it's one of the best evidences, well, for atheism, against the God. Well, that I don't have good reasons and evidence to believe that and there's never been good evidence for it. So just the term atheist would be that I've never seen any good reasons or evidence to believe that a God exists. Now, particular gods, again, suffering, etc. I don't know about you, Stops.
The thing is that there is no evidence, because atheism is not an ism. It's not an ideology. It's not something that you practice. It's not something that you follow with a goal that you have a certain dogma or doctrine or something like this. So there is no evidence for atheism because it's not something. It is just that you don't believe something, and that is it. So this is a stupid question, a nonsensical question.
That is responsible for the universe. So you have to admit that when you come with this question, this is what you're bringing with. The second thing is that the problem has lots of explanations: free will, wisdom of this divine being that was beyond us, and the assumption, therefore, within our understanding of what this divine being is that the universe that we find ourselves in is necessarily the best possible universe that we can be in. And we gave the examples of amoral universes or places, because of a universe where you can't do bad, or a universe where you can only do good. I hope
Okay, and I think we've rebutted that sufficiently, hopefully, if people were paying attention.
that's a reasonable summary.
That was fantastic, man.
That was really good.
Didn't
The fact that they can think it's really good, this is like a collective mindset, right? And I think I've shown why it isn't, why heaven refutes the idea that free will will be in any way affected if there wasn't evil. But this is their weakest. This is the weakest part for them, right? And I don't, like I say, I don't think anything's particularly strong. But the whole moral argument, and they will tout it, they will shout about it. We have this objectively, moral, that's all good, etc. But when you start to dig under the surface, and we haven't even got really under the surface, if I were to have the conversation with them, I can go, much deeper than that. But the fact that they're all agreeing just says it's like a collective mindset on this.
we didn't even bring religion into it.
Yes, you did. Were you not paying attention? Were you literally hypnotized? Of course he brought religion into it. He talked about an omnibenevolent God. Which God is he talking about? Allah, of course, because that's the only one you believe in. Like, Hamza, are you like not paying attention?
Which is fantastic. Which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to.
Oh.
I don't want anyone trying to start.
And look,
asking
they're all
about Islam
nodding.
because we've not mentioned it yet. I think for this stream, what we're doing is enough. Let's bring the atheists on. Challenge what we've said so far. See if they accept our premises. See if they accept the principles we've established. I'll be honest with you. After that, I can't see many coming on. To be honest, we've got reality.
Yeah, but I think Hamza as well. Like you've already pointed out, like arguments from personal incredulity. The fact that you can't see it doesn't mean that there aren't good arguments, of course. And with over 50% of philosophers being naturalists, your assertion that there aren't good arguments just is based on ignorance. You haven't looked into, and I'm not an expert, and I've only had a cursory look at both sides of it. But to suggest that you don't think there's good arguments, maybe there might not be in your mind good atheists come on, but to claim that there isn't good arguments against your position, you just haven't read anything at all.
Animator that I think he's something to do with that gin and tonic show with Rob. Yeah, and he's been spouting away. None of you are brave enough to come on the gin and tonic show. Yeah, we're here. Just click a link. Ta-da!
Well, that's exactly what Stop Spamming did. It was late at night after our show, because most of the show was, the first hour or more of the show was running during our show. So it wasn't as if we could suddenly jump off our show, not that we want to suddenly click here, but Stop Spamming had to do it. And then eventually he was ejected because they got tired of him. And now, today, he was blocked on their channel. And there was nothing on there. You weren't blocked. You were kicked, or what happened?
No, he said we are not allowed to go there.
Well,
He is not allowed to talk to us because somebody told him that we are just Islamophobes and haters, and this is why he doesn't have any arguments, and this is why we're not allowed to go on there.
Well, at least he certainly mentioned you, but I might be in the same boat as you. He's been, he literally said, I've been told that they are Islamophobic and attack religion, and I'm okay with you banning. Because I typed in the chat, because I was there, and he responded a couple of times to me. And Hamza, this is. And I said, why are you blocking Stop Spamming? And then he responded by saying, hey, he's the gin and tonic. They are Islam. I've been told, he said. He hasn't looked at anything. He claimed he's been told that we are, quote, Islam, or at least Stop Spamming, if not me as well, are Islamophobes, whatever the hell that's supposed to be, and we attack religion as opposed to critique it. And so he's quite happy for him to be blocked. So,
but look at Hamza now. The point that we're making is you are cowards. You are too much. You don't have the well. It's not. What is it? You don't have the knowledge level, the confidence. That's what it is. You don't have the confidence to come on the Gin and Tonic show. This is the point. And look at Hamza. Look, we're here. No, it says there Hamza's Den. It doesn't say Gin and Tonic show. So you are not on the Gin and Tonic show. You are too much of a coward to come on there. Subur is too much of a coward. Like, okay, Imran doesn't know about us. I can understand that. Cool. But Subur knows.
I've just told you that not everybody's allowed, and Stop Spamming was allowed for a short while. Then he was kicked, and now he's been blocked because they already knew that he was on Gin and Tonic, but somehow Hamza himself said, go look at his stream from today. He was told that we are Islamophobes or attack religion, as if he hasn't had that before. And he's supposed to be a lion. He's supposed to be able to defend his religion. And as Stop Spamming pointed out, if he had good arguments, he could defend against anything. He's, of course, the lion of Allah, isn't he? So this seems like a way to just dodge these things. Anyway, let's
Yeah.
carry on. Otherwise, we can carry on forward.
They're too scared.
You know, I said to him though, Sabor, I said, to be honest with you, you do know who Sabor is, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, because isn't Rob on your gin and tonic show? He said, yeah. I says, does he not have PTSD after his time in the park? He said he must come out in a sweat when.
I'd ask him the same question I ask anybody that says this, right? Anybody that claims that he schooled or rinsed me. What is it that he said that has been subsequently demonstrated to be true that I either don't agree with or didn't know? I'm waiting.
I don't understand this. What happened is you told him, I'm not an expert in this, so I am not going to comment. I'm going to let you talk, and I will go and look this up later. That is all that I remember. And
Yeah, he
that
went
is
on
all
about
that
evolution
happened.
and stuff like that. And that's not
Yeah,
my
but
field, and it's
this
still
is
isn't
all
my
that
field.
happened. So you did not debate, you did not argue, you did not even correct him, you didn't do anything. You just said, okay, cool, if that's what you want to say, I'll just let you ramble on and on. And that's all that he did. There's nothing, there was no discussion between you two where you said, yeah, but this is wrong and this is right or something. No,
Well,
there was
a bit of
nothing
that.
there.
I mean, there was some of that for sure, but there was also claims, and I was very clear that evolution is not my area of expertise. Just like
Exactly.
Sabur said to Phil, his area of expertise is not cosmology. He won't debate Phil. There we go. So
Yeah.
let's not hold the
This is
double
so
standard or
funny.
be a hypocrite here, right?
He hears Sabor's voice or sees him on a poster. I mean, and he wants you to come on his show.
Yes, I want him to come on the show.
Yes, because we do face palms.
come on
This
the
is
show.
why we want to give him the
No, on the
advantage
show,
or the
of course, we're gonna
possibility to
challenge-
come and
Well,
talk.
we're going to challenge Islam. Now, I know he's not good at defending Islam, so maybe I can understand him being cautious or a bit nervous about defending Islam. And his thing is critiquing, quote, atheism or evolution in particular. Well, that's fine. But that's not my area of expertise, evolution. He can critique atheism if he wants. But we're going to ask you to defend Islam. That's your assertion that it's true and you think you have good reasons. But I understand most Muslims are nervous of defending Islam. That's fine. They just say so. Do you know what? I'm a bit nervous of defending Islam. I'm not that. I'm fine if somebody says that, by the way, and I'm not being condescending. I'm fine if somebody says I'm not knowledgeable about defending Islam. Okay, why do you believe it's true? Maybe you should
It's so easy.
reevaluate your position.
And this guy, Clarissa, he's still talking shit. He's still talking about sex and
Let's not
things
get-
like that. This is
No, but it just reflects on that particular person. So I actually love it when people do that, to be honest.
It's amazing. But let me just there's somebody there. Let me
Yeah,
just-
I mean, look, at the end of the day, you can have a dialogue with somebody, but it's very important to fill out foundations first. And what I really liked about what Imran explained about evil is
Okay, I have to go and answer the door. I've just got somebody stopped, so I'm going to mute. If you can just take over and have, speak and comments and stuff, I'll be back in about 5.
I don't know what to do here. I don't understand how 3 people are collectively incapable of coming up with any single sound argument. Now, they have heard countless people who do not believe gods exist telling them that their argumentation, their line of reasoning, everything is wrong. It does not make sense. So what they are saying is not something that can be verified or falsified, because saying that God created the universe is just a claim, but you can neither verify or falsify it. It's just something that you take on faith and that we can't do anything with. So instead of saying, okay, we are going to stop saying that because it's stupid, they still say it. And they carry on and on and on with this, even though in the beginning, Hamza actually admitted, well, they can't show that God exists. So if they can't show that God exists, which would be the foundation, then you can't say, well, we can't show God exists, but he created the universe. So if you have a non-existing foundation, you can't build a house on that. And yet this is exactly what they're doing. They're saying, well, we can't show God exists, but he wrote the book, he created the universe, he created evil and good, and he is the judge, and he's going to send you to heaven or hell, and he's this and this and this. But they can't show that he exists. So the whole thing is like nonsensical. It simply boggles the mind how 3 adult people can sit there and talk like complete utter nonsense and then still laugh when somebody makes a false claim. And that for me is absolutely mind-boggling. So this Clarissa guy asks, who is the moron speaking? What country is he from? What does that change? It's the speech, not the speaker. It doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter what my hair color is and what city or country I was born in. None of that matters. If somebody comes to me and claims there's a God and they can't explain themselves, it doesn't matter what country I'm from. What matters is, can they in any way produce any coherent or good reason or any line of reasoning or argumentation that makes sense? And they can't. Right? So this is quite strange that people go and find reasons to argue with the people, not based on what they are saying, but how they look like. Like, why am I hiding my face? Well, because there's a very good reason. If I live in Abu Dhabi or something, I cannot afford to have my face somewhere because some idiot, zealous Muslim is going to say, I know this guy. And then what happens in a Muslim majority country is they immediately cancel your visa and they chuck you out of the country. Why would I want that? Just because these three guys are incapable of making a coherent argument, I would now risk my livelihood so that people chuck me out? No, that doesn't make sense, does it? Or the same thing, you have to go to Speaker's Corner before it makes sense what you are saying. Hic, Rhodos, hic salto. I don't know if you're educated. No, you're probably not. There's a story about a guy who keeps on bragging that he can jump 2 meters 50 high, which he did when he was in Rhodos at the Olympic Games. And now he's back at home, so the people say, well, then what stops you from doing that? No, I did this in Rhodes, on the island. There, I could do this. I jumped 2 meters 50. So the people kept on saying, well, shut up. This is where you can do this. So here you need to jump, and he couldn't jump. And this is the whole point. It doesn't matter where something is said or claimed or something. It matters whether it is correct or not. And this is where I see that Muslim apologists have a huge problem staying on point, staying with the argument, and then saying, okay, what is actually my point of bringing something across to somebody who does not believe gods exist? And they can't. So they start lying and deceiving, and they start waffling and fabricating. And then they say, well, ours is not so bad. The Bible is much worse. And that is crazy. That is utter, absolute madness to go and do things like that. Yeah, this guy is a sham. I'm ugly. Yeah, because I'm ugly, my arguments don't make any sense. Because your God created me ugly. That is why I cannot show my face. Oh my goodness, people. Benje Netherlands. Nierk is near Netherlands. Education, folks who convert, leave. Yeah, this is a lot of truth. I think they keep fooling. You have no argument. Exactly. Okay, does anybody in the chat have an argument? Well, Rob is gone. I have to fill another 2 minutes. Does anybody have atheists are scum? Scum of what? Atheists. An atheist is just somebody who doesn't believe gods exist or goddesses or whatever. So why is somebody who does not believe that something exists, why are they scum? I expect Netherlands, and what's wrong with that? I speak several languages. What is wrong with that? Does it make any difference to the way that I'm thinking? No, it doesn't. Just because I speak other languages does not mean that my arguments are more valid or less valid or anything. You are the ones making claims. Go and make your claims.
Sorry, I'm
Well,
back.
we critique Christianity, but just not here. Here we focus on Islam. We can have a different show of critiquing Christianity, but why should we do that? There's thousands of people who are doing that. We don't need to end this. Okay, you've had your chance. That's it. Rob is back. Let's continue.
Sometimes I find, even with experienced art, we can make this mistake of when someone says, why do evil things happen in the world, and they happen to be an atheist, we automatically try and go for, there's a wisdom that you may not see, which is good and okay, but I like the foundational approach that Imran is speaking about, where we say, well, firstly, without God, there is no such world. We can have a meaningful dialogue about this. So even if we are talking about
Yeah, we've covered this, so that's
Yeah.
not the case.
Actually,
But again,
another
one of
point.
the
If,
reasons
if,
for this, go on, you speak first.
if I look at the Quran, it says that Allah keeps up all the birds and everything that can fly because they can't fly by themselves. They hadn't heard of Banuri and things like that. So if an aeroplane today, which is held up by Allah, crashes, does that mean Allah slipped up or what? And how come, if something happens, like a natural catastrophe, that there is no distinction? There is no way of saying, well, this guy was a pious man, and that is why he was spared, and this guy is a total asshole, and he was killed. There is no way of doing that. If an aeroplane crashes, it is indiscriminate. There is no way of distinguishing, well, a Muslim is not damaged, is a survivor, and the Christian sitting next to him is dead. There is
Yeah.
no way of distinguishing any of that. If something happens, it happens to all groups. It is never in any way sorted by God preferences.
Yeah, so if it were the case that Islam was true, you would expect that in a plane crash, then Muslims to survive. And if it's the case, and if a Muslim is going to respond, no, that's not the case, all they can appeal to is the mystery of Allah, in which case you're undermining the case, because you're supposed to be giving convincing reasons to non-believers as to why Allah is all good, omnibenevolent, or it doesn't involve or doesn't get involved in or isn't evil. And if you're going to appeal to faith, that's obviously not going to be compelling, or it shouldn't be compelling to anybody. It shouldn't even be compelling to a believer, but it certainly shouldn't be compelling to a non-believer. Because if it were the case, like you say, that all quote unquote accidents, if Allah is upholding everything, which is an argument against what Imran said, which is everything is mechanistic, but then it has to be mechanistic by the will of Allah, obviously. And if that's the case, you're quite right. You would then ask, okay, so in that plane crash, how come Muslims didn't survive? And all he can say is, well, we don't know. We've got to have faith in Allah. Okay, fine.
It's a test for the families.
Yeah, it's a test for the family, or they've gone to Jannah. Well, in that case, all you need to do is try and put yourself in a position where you're not killing yourself, but you are likely to die because you're going to get to heaven quicker, in which case, that's where you want to be. So don't kill yourself, but find a loophole by allowing yourself to likely die, but just you're not doing it through your own hands. Yeah, it's a problem, I have to say.
good, we're still talking, assuming there's a God. Even if you're an atheist, you have to assume there's a God in order to make sense of those terms.
No, we don't. We only have to assume a God when we do an internal critique of your worldview. Then we assume a God. We go, okay, in a Muslim worldview or an Islamic worldview, you believe this God, you believe the God is this. Let's see whether those claims stack up in your worldview. That's the only time we're going to assume a God. We don't have, obviously we're not going to assume a God externally. And if you're going to make the claim that we must do, then what's your argument for that? And the only thing we've heard is that, hey, it's intentionality, and you can't talk about evil if you don't accept that the universe has intention. That's a non sequitur. That doesn't follow one from the other, and I think we've covered that.
So you're talking on our terms, right? And I think it's a very profound point that is often overlooked.
Tom looks like an atheist.
Okay, they bring Tom in, but I don't think he starts now. I could be wrong. Maybe he does actually start now. Maybe I edited
The
it
other two look like
incorrectly.
Muslims.
Let's just check.
Right, brother, just so you know, this is just for atheists right now. So if you're Muslim, come out of the back chat. We'll give Muslims a chance to come with their questions they've got that they want to put to Sabura and the doctor or me afterwards. But let's first give the atheists a chance, because we've been jumping all over their beliefs, and it's only fair to give them a shot.
What beliefs? Excuse me.
there's a
What beliefs? What beliefs? What are you talking about? An atheist is exactly that, not believing. So there is no belief that an atheist has. As a person, I have millions of beliefs, but an atheist does not have a single belief. Not one.
Yeah, okay, Stops and I slightly disagree on the language of that particular one there. But I guess what they're talking about is what they've heard from atheists. So again, if his language was more clear, i.e. here is we've talked about what we understand to be some of the common critiques that atheists bring to us, and now we're going to give them a chance if they want to, and if any of these critiques are something that they agree with, then we're going to give them a chance to come on. That's what he could have said if he was a little bit more accurate in the language. I mean, I understand it, and I know you're a little bit more anal on that thing. I accept that. I'm not going to critique it as often as you, but I understand that there's a point to be made there.
Interesting question. It's by Shaunus 32 at 9:54. He asked a question. Can you put that one up?
9:52.
Yeah.
Oh, Shaunus. Oh, yeah, he's a Swedish brother, mashallah. But he's going to go all philosophical on you, I'll tell you. I'll tell you that now. He hijacks every one of my Facebook posts and it becomes a scene.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's a nice guy, beautiful guy. He's so close to Islam, but it's the concept of a creator that he's struggling with. And he doesn't realize that we're not guessing at the concept. We believe we've had revelation about the concept. Do you get me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look at the face. This is Subur being embarrassed, looking embarrassed. But he will not apologize. He will never accept it. He will just they're sheepish.
What's he embarrassed for? Sorry, I looked at the chat.
He was saying bring up this comment up because he wanted to smash somebody, and then Hamza actually said no, he's a brother. Oh.
And should we chuck Tom on while I'm looking for it?
Who?
Tom
Because I have Tom as 5330. Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, so let's just see. Then we'll stop at the moment they start speaking to Tom. I just thought that there was something else they were saying. So I might have missed something.
Oh, yes, we spoke to Tom before. How are you doing, Tom?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Oh, and just before, do you guys mind if I...
Okay, so yes, it is. We're going to stop here. I apologize. There was still more here, so I must have edited this incorrectly. We're going to stop there for part one. So what we wanted to get through was their intro. I thought it was 52 minutes, and so somehow I've had it longer there. What we'll do in part two, when Stops and I get a chance, we can't promise when exactly that'll be, but when we get a chance, we'll do part two, which will include quite a bit of Tom Jump. Not everything. There's a part where he goes off on evolution and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna delve into that. And then we're going to do Stop Spamming because he came on after Tom. And then we'll have there was some part with Pio. We'll leave that part out as well, and we'll go straight on to that. If you want to watch the whole stream, it's on Hamza's Den anyway. But we'll select the parts with the atheists that I thought were the parts that are worth discussing. So overall thoughts, Stops for end of part one.
No, I don't know. I don't really know what to say because I'm so disappointed. Because number one, Gin and Tonic has been running for I don't know how long. Now, if I go and want to start a new show, I look around. Okay, what kind of other shows are there that are covering the same topic that I'm doing? And this is quite obvious. So everybody, okay, Imran says he didn't know about this. The others definitely did know. So then they put the time slot so that it makes it impossible for us to go there because they know that we are the critics who are, number one, quite vocal, but number two, and that's much more important, we have the experience to handle Islam-based claims because they can't trick us with their usual nonsense. Now, then I went on there and I was very polite. I let Imran waffle on and on and on. I didn't interrupt him. It's only the second time when I said, listen, now you're getting a bit like over bearing, and he realized it and said, oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's leave it. And then before I could even reply to this, why it was overbearing, why it was this, they said, okay, cheers, bye, chill, and kicked me out. So it's disappointing that they don't have anything new.
I think the only thing I'd say there is because you know how these guys are, it's in that particular case, I saw that and I was like, I know it was painful for you. Should have just let him go on with his teacher analogy. They love their analogies because they repeat it endlessly as if it's a good analogy. And I could see your frustration at that. And that gave them the excuse to get rid of you at that point. Oh,
yeah,
well,
but he kept on saying, yeah, we're going to finish now. We're going to finish now.
Yeah.
So I was under. The thing is, you try and walk on eggshells. You try and be like super utter whatever, so that you don't give them any reason to say anything. And then they still do. But the thing is, the main thing is, I thought there's going to be something new. I thought they spent time together beforehand and said, listen, what we're going to do, I mean, this is what I would do. I would say, I want to bring up a cooperation, and I want to have some people on there who can address atheists. And then they sort of, get together and discuss what it is they're going to do. They obviously didn't. They have nothing new. They just took the same stuff that we hear all the time from Speaker's Corner and from all these live chats. There is nothing new. It's all the same regurgitated old stuff that we know already, making false claims, creating huge strawmen, non sequiturs. It's crazy that they don't have anything in reply, because I used to be really scared when they came up with these names and all these sheikhs and that, and I realized they have absolutely nothing. And then they say, well, what is the evidence for atheism? I don't know. I'm speechless that there is so little that they have as a reply, and yet so many people are still following it, and nobody is actually thinking. I would have thought by now there should be a tsunami of people leaving, because
there are in other countries.
So much wrong.
I think we're
but
just
there's
not
so much
aware
wrong.
of it.
There shouldn't be a single Muslim left. They have been shown black on white that the Quran is unreliable. They've had now since June to get this information out to everybody. It should have spread like wildfire. Oh my goodness, our Quran is unreliable. The whole basis for the Islamic belief is the infallibility of the Quran. And now all of a sudden it's shown to be like totally unreliable, and there are still Muslims. I can't understand it. And they still have the audacity to go and tell us that we are irrational. Yeah.
Great stuff. And on that note, I think, hopefully this has been of interest to people watching there. I think the arguments, the three that they brought up, were very weak, and particularly of all of them, I don't think any of them were particularly strong. But I think the morality one, or the view that why is there evil in the world, that was unbelievably weak. And I think I've shown, not just rebutted, I think I've refuted Imran's central claim about this, which I'm happy to do together with him. But I think the other thing, so number one, Hamza's claim that evolution, so this whole thing around beliefs, most of that was obvious. And so if an atheist says proof, you can just say, what do you mean by proof? And they'd say, well, demonstrate your views are the case. You could go into, philosophical and mathematical proofs, and why, that's a very hard bar for anybody to come over. But then the second one was that evolution doesn't undermine a creator. And I think both Stops and Tom Jump, and maybe even Pio, if I remember correctly, all pointed out, but they were it was like after Hamza had heard this, it was a case of him basically repeating the same thing. Well, all three of atheists, take note, all of these atheists have said that evolution doesn't undermine a creator. And all three of them were careful to say, and I think just not strongly enough in my view, which creator. A creator is irrelevant. The grammar of the question is poorly phrased, because a creator can refer to anything. Are you talking about a deist creator? No, I'm just talking about a creator. Which one? There is no just thing as a creator. You are taking from the mindset that you've got to get somebody over the creator barrier first, and then to your specific creator. But when you ask the question the other way around with regards to evolution, it works with specific creators. It will refute or undermine certain theistic versions where people believe there is a specific creation event that went on. That's in contradiction with man having a common ancestor. So that's the fine. So that was that one. And then, as I say, so Imran's one, I think we've done there. So I think the big three, which, again, happy to do, they're doing something 9 p.m. tonight. I'm not sure if I can make it. Maybe I'll try and get on, but there's going to be 5 of them on there. So I don't know what chance one will have to actually speak about this, and they're going to probably do their own version of this. So maybe we'll listen in, and we might have to do a response video to their response video, a bit of the inception there to point out, because if they just repeat what they've already repeated, then obviously there's nothing much to say. We've talked about that. But if there's anything new to say, then maybe we can do a response video. If Stops is available, or if I'm available, we might try and get on, although Stops is blocked, so I don't know if he will. But if anybody else wants to try, it'll be after 9 p.m. tonight. So on that note, we've finished with part 1. And as I say, when we get a chance, we'll do part 2, where we'll actually go into the arguments with Tom Jump and Stops, and then we'll have their closing whenever Stops and I are available. Sorry, we can't tell you exactly when Stops and I, we're not.
No, we can. It's quarter past.
Say again?
We can. Quarter past.
Quarter past what?
Yes. Exactly quarter past.
What are you referring to? Sorry.
That's my joke. It's a very specific time. It will be 1:15.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry.
Whatever.
That went over my head for a second. I have to.
Sorry.
I wasn't there. No, that's fine. So yes, thank you very much to everybody who's viewed it. Hopefully, it's been of interest.
And please
to
go
you.
and watch Rob versus Sabor. I just did a quick check. There are like, I don't know, 50 Rob versus Sabor. Everybody has their own version. I don't know how many.
Yeah. And of course,
But actually, what you should do before you do that, go to Speakers Corner UK and first watch the explanation video before you watch the videos.
Yeah, but that's going to ask them then to think about things ahead of time, and a lot of people don't want to do that, unfortunately. Which yeah, it's just sad, really.
All right, guys. See you the next time. And if you have something to correct us on, please come and take us to task and correct us. Please do. Bye.
Good night.